Okay, yeah, I guess we're live.
Yeah.
Take a few minutes for some people to come in here. Hopefully there's someone around that got the memo. But anyway, it doesn't matter. We're going to have a good conversation. I'm sure someone will peek in at some point here.
There'll
So
be some people pop in, I'm sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you can talk about whatever you want. I don't care. I've got questions here. I got 5 questions I want to eventually ask you. Just kind of summarize what it is you're doing, why you're choosing to live the way you live, and is one of the questions. And you can just
crazy.
Talk about whatever you want, essentially, other than the stuff, of course, the stuff that YouTube doesn't want us talking about.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
Jen's in here.
Why are you choosing the way to live the way you live? Fuck. Hey, Jen. I think that's just because I'm crazy. I usually ask a bunch of friends.
That's true, but we're all crazy.
No, man, I don't know. I mean, somebody's got to do something, and this happens to be the path. And if I had more money, I wouldn't live this way. Obviously, but even though I'm frugal, I still wouldn't struggle like this. But I mean, at the end of the day, this is the path I'm on. Accept it and keep moving forward and try to make it better. I guess it's best thing I can say. Really, I don't know. I chose it, back in the day.
How long have you been gone from home now? It's got to be. It's almost 2 years, isn't it now? Well, it will be in May, I guess.
Yep, May last year, May 2023. That's when I left.
Rum Runner, greetings from Poland. Thanks for making the trip over here, Rum Runner 478. Appreciate you.
Hello, brother. Anyway, so
this is my brother Gordon, and he's going to talk about what he did and why he's doing what he's doing, and he's been away from home now for almost 2 years. He's been living the dream, Gord? Living the dream, and he left home to get some awareness into the population about the state of things, the real truth of what's going on. And he's been successful in certain ways and unsuccessful in others, as you would be in any endeavor. But I'm not going to talk for the man. He's sitting right here in front of me. So basically, I just asked him, why do you live the way you do? Like, why are you living in squalor out in a frozen field in the middle of Ontario right now?
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, some people know because we talked before, but I guess the main premise was I'm a little frustrated because I did believe that I could travel across this country that they call Canada, the landmass that they call a country, and I actually thought I would find enough people with enough testicular fortitude to stand up against the criminals that operate as the federal government and try to fix the problems that we're dealing with here, not unlike what everybody else is dealing with around the world. And for a little while, there was some success happening. There was a lot of momentum getting built. Ended up that infiltrated probably right from the beginning by some not so cool people. But you just kind of accept that. You separate and keep rolling, move past it. Found out that there's a lot of people out there that, have the moniker of a freedom hero that are actually the complete opposite of that. But that's up to the masses to figure out for themselves. I know where I know. I don't go into attacking them or whatever, but I just know. Anyway, so yeah, built a lot of momentum, almost had things coming to a fruition, and then these so-called people and groups decided to attack everything and say we were committing treason and we were committing violence and so on and so forth. And now nobody's done nothing a year later, and it's funny because now it's the government that's committing treason, and as anybody knows, it can't be both. It's one or the other. So I just refuse to quit, and I don't know what else to do. I think somebody's got to move forward to try to waken up people up and show them the frauds of the system and the crimes that are being committed. And at some point in time, there'll be a breaking point, and hopefully it's sooner than later, I guess.
So what do you think the number one reason people aren't acting right now? They're not doing, in your mind anyway, and through your experience, right?
Well, I don't think there's really one reason per se. Indoctrination would be a key part of that, because most people don't understand the fraud of the system that we are faced with every day, whether it's the legal system, the political system, or the economic system. But I think I think a big part of that too is people don't know how to function without these systems. So they're afraid to, it's almost like the Matrix where it talks about, you know, too many people are afraid to unplug from the Matrix. But I don't know, the caveat to that is the Matrix is what's actually keeping them enslaved. So you got fear, you got apathy. People won't even look at information when it's put in front of them. Stockholm syndrome type stuff, cognitive dissonance, indoctrination. And some people just flat out think you're crazy. You know, they use that term like pseudo legal when you talk about common law, right? Or pseudo constitutional arguments and stuff like that when you try to bring that kind of stuff up, right? So I think it's a combination of that: fear, ignorance, indoctrination.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that for sure. That's been my experience too. And a lot of it too, I think, is comfort. Like I was saying, I'm writing a book called The Last Crumbs of Comfort, right? And it's a suitable title, I think, for the times we're living in. And listen, I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of liking comfort. I mean, I do like comfort. I do enjoy comfort. But at some point, we're going to have to act here. We're going to have to do something that's never been done before. Right?
Yeah.
That's never been done before. It's never successfully been done in this country, that's for sure. Right? But how long can you lay down and keep taking the beating before you finally do something to help yourself? And I'm not talking violence, I'm not talking about militias and all that garbage. I'm talking about real people standing up and saying, you know what? I don't care if you throw me in jail. I'm not going to comply with your nonsense. I'm done with you. I'm just done with you. That's why I teach common law, guys, is because I want you, not that I think you're going to be ultra successful in common law, because we know we don't have an enforcement arm, but at least you can know the reasons why you're in the position you're in and what's really happening around you. And when you have that information, you can do something with it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. When you talk about comfort, that goes back to, you know, why I would choose to live the way I live. And that's a big separator because, and it's not about me. I'm not blowing myself up or any of that kind of stuff. It's just a simple thing that, I know what I know. I see what I see. I can't just turn it all off. I know the whole thing's a lie. And I'm almost forced to live in this way, in a sense, in this battle. And there is not very many people that would walk this path and struggle and deal with all the bullshit that you have to deal with to try to right the wrongs. So it's like I do it a bit by choice, but I also recognize that if I'm not here, who else is here? And nobody else is really trying to change the game. So I feel like I kind of created this animal and I got to ride it out to the end. But comfort is the thing. Same with common law. Like we talk about that a long time, and one of the hardest things is it's all true, it's all real, it's 100% standing in your truth, but it's very difficult when you don't have that arm of enforcement, so to speak. Like we've talked about this multiple times, right? Like these guys get away with whatever the hell they want to get away with because we can't hold them accountable.
That's the whole problem right there. And that's where I think a lot of the solution should be, or a lot of the effort should be placed. I mean, until we have a common law sheriff society where we have a number of common law sheriffs all over the place, and they have the ability to enforce the real truth, which in my opinion is natural law, common law, God's law, whatever you want to call it, your original rights that are not privileges. See, what's gone on, guys, is you've all, and myself included until I knew better, you've traded your rights. You're born with rights for privileges. That's what's happened. You know, and now your overlords can take that privilege from you anytime they wish and are, but they can't take your rights because no paper can hold them. There's no paper that'll hold your rights. It can't be held. So that's what's gone on.
Yeah, that's a hard pill for people to swallow because everything that they've been taught basically becomes a lie, and now they got to reformat their whole entire existence, and they got to learn all this stuff. So the real simple part of it, when you talk about rights, like when you take any title of a citizen, resident, taxpayer, any of that stuff, or you claim the name on the identification, birth certificate, driver's license, whatever the case may be. The truth of the matter is, inside of this existing structure, you have zero rights to anything. You don't have any rights to property. You don't have any rights to vehicles. You don't have any rights to nothing. You're nothing more than tenants or users, or, you know what I mean, citizens. Everything, like you said, man, everything is a privilege, right? That's why when you look at properties, you know, bylaw officers come in there, they don't need warrants, they can do this. And just recently, the one we're dealing with, and I seen the paperwork the other day, and the bylaw officer, you know, and basically he wrote in there, like, you know, you're commanded to comply with this order. Based on what? You know what I mean? Who are you to command anybody to comply with anything? And then I started talking about the whole premise. You know, when you talk about, bring up the fact of slavery, anybody that's trying to exert rights over something they don't own, that's slavery. And if they own you, like you said, You've said it before, I've said it before. If you own me, if you're claiming to own me or own my property, then please provide me with the contract of sale or the bill of sale that shows that you bought me or you bought my property or whatever, because otherwise you're trying to administer rights over something you don't own. Where's the piece of paper? Right. That's slavery. And slavery is
paper that shows that you bought me.
Yep.
And how much I was bought for, and where I'm to live, and how much I'm to earn, and how long my indenturitude period is, and all of that. And I've never ever been provided any of that. I don't think anybody has that I know of.
No, they don't have that. That would be way back in the day. They would have the slave purchase contract, but they don't have them anymore. The actual slave shackles now is the dollars that you carry in your pocket and the credit cards. That's your slave shackles. But again, you're trapped into a system that without using them, you can't purchase goods, you can't whatever. Even though you're not purchasing anything, you're just trading debt notes. That's the system they built. Even though you know it, man, it's a struggle. You have to take part in it the way it exists right now. That's why my belief is, and again, it isn't violent, man. I believe that we're lucky in the sense of what happened, because these people have actually shown how criminal they are and committed egregious crimes against us. So that being the fact, then they deserve to be arrested for committing these crimes. So we have to flip the whole apple cart upside down and then flip it back up on its wheels and place the apples back in it properly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was at one point a proper system of justice in common law, because like I pointed out to you before, my great-grandfather used it in court in the 1940s. And his claim was 2 sentences written on a napkin, guys. And he had grade 3 education. And he was successful in his claim. And it was brought before the judge in the town of Morel, PEI, in 1940. And it was a 5-minute hearing. That's all it took. And then justice was awarded to my grandfather, my great-grandfather. And that was, so that they obviously are lying to you, because there were courts of record. There were common law courts in the 40s in Canada. I don't know when they stopped. They never stopped. But like I said, what happened is they laid the legal system right over the fingers of common law to disguise it and hide it. It's still always been there, but it's just being cleverly hidden. Right. And it's being hidden for a number of reasons. The main reason is slavery and to use you as chattel. I mean, it's the servitude, the debt for the bond. They want you to be the person who pays the debt. They want you to pay all the debts. Right. They want to have these secret contracts with you that you don't even know you got. And they don't, they're not a contract anyway, because they never gave you your duties and obligations. They just told you, basically, you're going to register your car or whatever the heck it is. They're all contracts. And like someone pointed out here in the chat here, silence is consent. And it absolutely is. It's called acquiescence in law. That means you're quiet. So their version of the facts are the facts in the court. That's why you have to rebut the presumption. You got to, because they're going off assumptions and presumptions, right? And what's the first thing you did, Gordy, in court? What is it you do? You read out what? The 12 presumptions, right? Yeah,
the 12 assumptions and presumptions. Yeah. 12 of them. I think the key, all 12 have strength to them, but I think the key one is the one, there's 2 actually that are similar, but the one of public oath of office. So when you rebut that presumption in court, basically what that entails is the judge, the justice, whatever you want to call that man or woman acting in that role, they've taken an oath to the Bar Association. And when you take the oath to the Bar Association, that forever supersedes any oath that you'll ever take in your lifetime. And then so at some point in time, they did a good job as a lawyer. They really railroaded that guy that stole the shoes, So then they're going to get friggin' raised up in the world, and they're going to become a judge, appointed as a judge. And then they take that oath of public office. So then that oath is a complete contradiction with the oath to the Bar Association. So typically, if the system was just at all, when you rebut that presumption, the judge is supposed to recuse themselves from the case because it's a conflict of interest and it has been brought to the forefront. But as we know, as well as I do, they ignore that because we don't have an arm of enforcement, and they just continue on with these so-called proceedings. And what's interesting, before we go on, because I don't want to lose this train of thought, when you were talking about what you were talking about earlier, and the individual that says about silence is consent and acquiescence, it's actually even funnier because that's true. But as soon as you try to speak up and not acquiesce to any of this stuff, what do they do in these so-called courts? They try to charge you with contempt. So you're trying to speak up and protect yourself, but they've created this other legal fabrication that they can quiet you back down to enforce these laws and whatever onto you because you're in contempt of court, but actually you're not. It's just that's the way they fabricate it, right?
Oh, let there be no illusions, guys. They got all the back doors blocked. They've dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's. We know that, right? And they continue to abuse us because we don't have an enforcement arm. The minute we do, things will change. What we're trying to do is we're trying to go after these people's bonds. That is the key, in my opinion, to the entire cracking the entire thing wide open. If you get their bond information and you lodge a complaint against, or not a complaint, a claim against their bond, it's game over for them. They can't work anymore. They're done. That's the way we're going to have to figure it out, is who holds their bonds? How do we get access to their bond?
There again, that's supposed to be public information, but they keep it a secret because they know that's what's going to hold them accountable. I don't know how many people here are from Canada, but regardless of Canada, what they call Canada, how many people are here from places that are UN member states per se? But I'll touch on that I did with Norman's court case. I'm not allowed to speak in there, but they did allow me to be there as a Mackenzie friend or whatever to help. So I would just write things down and pass it off to Norman. He would speak it in court. Anyway, and one of the questions, just to make sure it's completely clear, one of the questions I asked was, is this court bound by the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights? Which, as a member state of the United Nations, all these countries are supposed to be bound by these declarations. And the judge stated on the record, and his name was Justice Legault. I don't care about saying it no more. He's a criminal. Anyway, he stated clearly on the record that they were not bound by these documents. And I said, okay, so then what are you bound by? And he told me that they were bound by statute and criminal code. Well, statute is not law. Statute is legislation. And criminal code is nothing more than corporate policy. So that neither one of those are law. But on the record, he stated. So then you have these leaders, so-called leaders like Trudeau or, Macron or any of these people from around the world, and they go to these UN meetings and they keep going on about the UN this. But their courts aren't even bound by these documents. So how much bullshit is that? It just shows you how much more the illusion is taking place.
Yeah, this is Carly Simon said, even in Admiralty law, the contract cannot be complete if the agreement of both parties is not submitted. We are never consulted about any bills, laws, just words on paper. Yeah, and it's because the reason why is because they haven't given you any of your obligations. They've kept all that part of the contract out of it on purpose because they know darn well that if they told you what your obligations and duties were, you probably wouldn't contract with them, right? So it's all fraud. Any contract that's one-sided, i.e. there's no signatures from a living man or woman, or there's no duties and obligations, or both parties haven't met in an equal playing field, and both parties know what the ins and outs of the contract are, it's null and void. It does not exist. It's a done deal. It's no one can argue that. That's the truth.
Yeah. So how do they get around that now? So one of the ways that one of the ways they got around that was implied contracts or tacit contracts, things that you didn't even know you contracted to, like the case of taking ownership of the name on the identification, or passing your driver's license over to the police officer because that's the binder to the contract, and now that he's got you there. We don't even know we contract, and they trick us into that. You know what I mean? So that's how they do it. And now, and back to your point about from 1942 or 1940s with your grandfather or whatever the case may be. Back then, we actually had, the courts were public at that point in time. They were public courts, so people did have rights in them courts because they were public. Now they're not public; they're actually corporations, and the buildings are actually owned by the corporations. So they are no different than McDonald's or Burger King or Walmart or any of that stuff. And that means, because they own the building, the corporation owns the building, whatever policies are in place, you have to abide by the policies of the corporate building. And so I don't know how it is in Nova Scotia. I know they started setting it up before I left, but in Ontario, for sure, every time you go into court, you have to walk through these scanners, and they're checking you for, suitcase and weapons or whatever the hell they're checking you for. But at the same time, all the lawyers, judges, and police officers, even with sidearms on them, are walking. They don't have to go through the scanners. So what does that do? That basically is, it's removing your presumption without knowing. It's removing your presumption of innocence by walking through that, because you're complying. You're actually contracting by walking through that gate, and you don't even know that. So I've started raising that when I went in there. They still make you go through the gate, but I started raising that, and that's a violation of the Charter of Rights. Not that the Charter has any standing, but you keep throwing these stuff back in their faces. That's a violation, because we're being treated differently than the police, the lawyers, the judges, so on and so forth. And I even brought it up in the court. And same in Canada with the courts in Canada now. They don't fly the flag. No more Canadian flag in the courts. Not that I'm a proponent of the Canadian flag, because you know how I feel about that, and it supports the corporation and it supports all the other stuff that they're doing underneath that. Yeah. But removing that flag basically was a symbolism of basically taking God out of the court, and it's actually run now by the Treasury Department. If that doesn't tell you it's a corporation, I don't know, but it's run by the Treasury Department, and they say that the law is now that they can use the corporate emblem. The corporate emblem. They're telling us everything rather than the flag, right?
So they're corporations, and they're no longer courts of law, not real law. They're just public policy enforcers.
Yeah, they're
for-profit corporations.
Corporations, yeah, no longer public court. So like you see, and same as the police stations, right? So, when you see people going in there videotaping in courts or police stations, and they're saying, oh no, we have the right to do this. This is a public building. Well, they're not going to tell you the truth, because they're trying to keep the ruse undercover. But the fact remains is, when they tell you you don't have the right to video in there, it's not because of any other reason except for the fact that it's actually a corporate building, and that's their corporate policy. But so far nobody's actually let that slip out yet, but that's the reason behind it. Same as when people say that the police work for them. No, they don't work for you. The police are corporate employees of a corporation that work for a higher corporation.
A long time ago, maybe they did, but they don't now. That's for darn sure. They're policy enforcers only. They work for the corporation, as evidenced by their Dun and Bradstreet numbers. They're all companies, right?
Yep.
And don't believe what we're saying here, guys. Go do your own research. Like I said, go look it up. Dun and Bradstreet. We can even give you the Dunn's numbers. We have them for just about everything. We have them for Revenue Canada. We have them for Canadian government. We have them for Corporation of Canada. We have them for all these law institutes, Ontario Supreme Court, all these places. They're corporations, guys. And you're a living flesh and blood man or woman. How can a corporation do business with you? How is it any of their charters or any of their internal corporate policies, which are acts and statutes, how do they apply to you? Magically? Did Jack and the Beanstalk create some imaginary thing that automatically applies to all flesh and blood men or women, or am I delusional here? Well, I haven't seen the contract, and until I do, I won't adhere to any of it.
It doesn't apply to the living man or woman, but the way people get trapped is it applies to the corporate fiction that they created with the identifications, and starting with the birth certificate. That's how it applies. That's why taking the title citizen and things like that, you've trapped yourself.
Lose the name, win the game, guys.
you take the title citizen, you've already lost the battle. You have no rights as a citizen. You have nothing more than privileges, a taxpayer, resident, any one of them titles that they want to put upon you. And you know, just to be clear, you know, a lot of people use terms like sovereign and sovereign citizen and all this kind of stuff. Sovereign citizen is an oxymoron. You cannot be sovereign and be a citizen, because a citizen's a slave and a sovereign is free. And you can't even use the term sovereign man or woman. Some people do that. You can't use the term sovereign man or woman, because sovereignty only comes from land ownership. So if you actually owned your land free and clear of all encumbrances via a loyal title or an original land patent, you would be a sovereign, but only on your own property. Once you leave that property, you're not sovereign anymore. So you don't need the term sovereign at all. You're making it too complicated. You drop any of these other terminologies, and all it is in this world is the same as you were born. A man or a woman, that's it. That's all. Nothing else.
Woman.
That's
Full
it.
stop. Full stop.
Don't need nothing else. You overcomplicate it by doing that. And these are ways that they trap you. That's why there's so much of this information out there, I believe, because I believe it's being put out there to confuse people on this learning curve, you know?
Actually, a 24 Reveler, who wins the game is the person who is able to enforce their nonsense, to be quite clear and quite true with you. Those that can enforce what they're doing, no matter whether it's right or wrong, will always be the victor, right?
To a point, yeah, to a point, I would say that. But then I would say for sure that I got a big target on my back. I know that I've learned in Norm's court case that they have cybercrime units, and they look at everything that they deem to be a threat to them for whatever reason. So I know, and then I have to wonder, because I openly, you know about this, Crow, man. I do my lives on Facebook, whatever. I speak publicly. I openly say whatever I have to say about all of this system, the crimes they commit. I speak a little harsh and rash sometimes, but I think that maybe part of the reason that I haven't been picked up, first of all, I don't make threats. I make statements, so I'm not that stupid. And second of all, I think that, you know, I don't think I'm as smarter than everybody in the world, but I think that I'm smart enough and I know enough stuff that I've said openly they'll never trap me in the legal system. And if they start bugging me too much, and too much is going to become public, and too many people are going to start seeing the truth. Because I think I can hold them accountable on a bunch of levels, man, by standing in court. And I think, like we were talking earlier, that's important for people to think about too. When you're trying to common law, it's 100% real, but it goes back to that point of who can enforce their rules. And I think, like I said to you earlier, I think we got to start. It's kind of hybridizing it, even though it really isn't. But if we use common law jurisdictional standing and start tying that into contract, which is legal, contract law is legal, guys. This isn't no hokey pokey conspiracy theory stuff. People can say that about common law all they want, but when you talk about contract law, that is legal in their world. So we start tying the contracts to the jurisdiction of the man or the woman and all that kind of stuff, and the corporate entities that can't contract with us and all these kind of things. That's where I think we're going to break the camel's back. And I think that's why I said last night, when I did the live last night, about Revenue Canada or about police pulling you over the side of the road, it's up to you how comfortable you are doing this. But I think we got to start challenging every contract, every one of them, because there is not one of the contracts, no matter if we signed it. People say, oh, well, you signed to get your birth certificate, or you signed to get your driver's license. It doesn't matter. We signed it, but we didn't know the terms. So that means that contract is null and void, because there's fraud involved in the contract. Any contract that has fraud in it is no good. So they're not valid no more. But you need the knowledge to know that, right?
No, I agree with you 100%. And legal is contract, but common law is also contract.
Right.
If you know contract law, you know common law, because that's essentially what it all boils down to.
Yep. So when you do this all the time, right? The legal system.
Guys, can you share this out, please, and hit the like button?
When you do this little thing with your hands, and the legal system is laid over common law, like finger to finger like that, and that's how they've kind of covered it up and hidden it. Now I'd say we take them hands apart, and now we weave them together, weave the fingers together with common law and contract law, and that's the key right there. Because you have to weave common law into this. It's not separate. Contract is legal, common law is a man's law. They weave together, and I think that's how we crack the code, because they became corporations, and no corporation can contract with any one of us.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's 100% accurate. Problem is 90% of the people don't realize that they are in contract with them because they've agreed to play that part. They're acting in the public rather than living in the private. And people ask me all the time, like, what should I read? I want to get into common law. What should I read? Go on Google. I don't like Google, but go on Google and type in living in the private PDF file. Living in the private PDF file, and download that. There's about at least 200 pages of really solid information in there. When you've read all that, come back and tell me that you've read it. And if you have questions, I'll try and answer it. But that's a really good one. And I don't know why Google's still allowing that to be found. Because, I mean, guys, there's not a lot written about this stuff out there, obviously. There was a lot more 10 years ago when I first started down this path. But they are suppressing information. You can be sure. I also use DuckDuckGo. Sometimes you can get a little better there. They find you can get a few more links through there that they let through or whatever. I don't know how the hamster turns the wheel in the internet, but that's seems to be the case anyway. But there's info out there still, guys. If you know, I'm going to get a book on Amazon here not too much longer called The Book of Courts Martial. The Book of Courts Martial, 1982 to 1990. And it's a book John Quaid recommended, and it's about how the courts operate under military law. There's a whole section in there on military law and what it means in the modern corporation system. And it's important stuff to understand, not to understand, because understand means stand under, as you guys know. It's important to comprehend what all that information is and to be able to apply it to common law. But I mean, you don't have to jump in the deep end right away. Just start learning a little bit every day. I tell people this all the time. If you're not willing to take 30 minutes out of your busy day and learn something about common law or learn something about another system you don't understand, then do you really want to be free? Is that really your desire? Or do you want to just fall back into the debt slavery system that we're all in one way or another still caught up in, right? For the most part, I don't act in the public. I live in the private, right? And I'm happier there. I do better in that realm, but it's a hard road. Gordy can tell you this himself. It's not an easy road to live. You don't have access to a lot of things that people have access to. Everything you try and do is twice as hard, right? And it takes twice as long, but it's doable. You just have to be willing to sacrifice maybe just a little bit of comfort in order to see it through. But anyway, that's my rant part of the video, I guess.
Rant, yeah. I don't know. That's a hard question when people ask you what would you read or whatever, you know, what would you read, fucking all that kind of stuff. Because there's so much information. But I would say, I think the key points for me in my learning journey, just understand common law is pretty basic. You're a living man or woman. Nobody has any rights that they can administer over you. That's it. That's all. Not unless you agree to it. Very, very simple. But then when you start understanding contracts and contract law a little bit, that's a big play. You should understand that and how that works, because the very simple part of the contract is it has to be consensual and it has to be completely transparent. All the duties, obligations agreed upon by both parties. It can't be one-sided. They can't be enforced under threat of intimidation or coercion or threat of taking property or any of that kind of stuff. And then the big thing for me, though, is the understanding and the comprehension, I guess, a better term, but comprehension and learning of the fact that this entire system that we live under in this landmass they call Canada is a fraud from day one. It's never been real. It's never been true. It's always been an illusion. And once you understand that, these are the criminals that are enforcing all of these policies, bills, statutes, acts that are actually destroying, society. So when you realize that they don't have any true authority to do it by any stretch of the imagination, it's all a fraud. When you start realizing that, that's big. So if you're in Canada or you're in this landmass or you want to learn about that, and I would say even people in Australia, New Zealand, any Commonwealth nation, same systems.
UK.
Yep, exactly. So, but here it's the big book that I like to put out there is Whole Canada from R. Roger Smith. You can find that PDF online. You read that, it'll really tell you about the fraud of this what they call a nation. And with the UK, all of these Commonwealth nations, when you talk about the monarchy and the crown, the big thing with the monarchy and the crown is if you go back to the Bill of Rights in the UK of 1688, that became a limited monarchy at that point in time, meaning that they could no longer act outside of any of the UK Parliament. So they don't have any power, not even in their own landmass. So if they don't have power in their own landmass, how could they exert power over any other landmass? So that was a real big thing for me, right?
Absolutely true. And as we found out by the Statute of Westminster in 1931, there was no legitimate succession of power anyway, or land titles, which is what gives them the power, which is the office of the Governor of General. You know, the actual titles of lands. It was never actually given proper, So, I mean, everything that they created then from that moment forward was 100% fraudulent in the fact that there was no actual true power bestowed upon anybody. In fact, it was the opposite. All the provinces in Canada were cut loose. They were given back to the province to decide. They were all sovereign. They were given back to the provinces to decide how they wanted to create governments, or if they did want to create government, or if they wanted to create individual provincial constitutions, or they wanted to come together and confederate in a country, or what they wanted to do. But nothing was done. They just continued passing on this ruse that the new Canadian government was formed from the monarch system. All false. Not only false, but we have all the documents to prove it. We can tell you, we can show you where it happened.
Yeah, 100%. Even so, you go back to, I've talked a lot about this too on my lives and Facebook, whatever. Anyway, you go back to Confederation. Confederation, they try to tell us Canada became a sovereign nation. The fact, what happened at that point in time was we became a dictatorship that was ruled by the corporation called the Governor General. The federal government had no power or authority whatsoever, and at best, all they could do was advise the Governor General. When the Statute of Westminster came into play, the Governor General had no longer had any authority whatsoever. They still play the ruse. We still have the Governor General. It's basically an authority without a commission without authority, paying big salary for nothing. But anyway, they continued the ruse. No provinces. Well, at that point in time, the provinces should have made their own constitutions within the province, and then from them constitutions, once they achieve that level, so the provincial governments had standing, because right now they don't. Once they achieve that level, then they could come together and they could create a federal system of government that they could all mutually agree upon, and they never done that. And then you go to 1982 with Pierre Trudeau and the Charter of Rights and all this crap that he brought out.
Trying to rehash the BNA Act that he didn't create, and then was rescinded upon Queen Victoria's death in 1901. Yep,
100%. And people think that he was trying to do things for the Charter of Rights, for the rights of the people. But what he was actually trying to do was give validity to the federal government, because they didn't have any. And he failed in that attempt because Quebec did not sign on to the Charter as per Section 23, which is the language part of it. And you can see that in Section 59.
Yep.
Section 58 and 69 clearly states that it'll be agreed upon or signed off on a later date. So it's not even enacted. And then using the BNA Act, maxim of law, which all of these courts are based upon from the Roman civil law, maxim of law, if you did not create, you cannot change. So they did not create that document. Even changing the title to the Constitution Act was not a valid thing to do. And it's an act of the UK government. It's owned by the UK government. What nation would have a constitution with their main document being owned by another country's government? It makes no sense whatsoever. So it's all a ruse. It's all a lie. The Constitution, the Confederation, the Charter, the federal government has absolutely no authority whatsoever. CPAC is another example.
Like, again, Gordy, how do we get people to see that?
Well, that's the example. So like I said, when I tried to take it to another level, I have a hard time getting on bigger platforms. And I think the reason is because all the bigger so-called freedom platforms, I believe that they're maybe not all controlled op, but certainly ignorant, and they're all trying to work within the system, and they don't want to talk to me because I'm outside of the system completely because I know it's a fraud. So trying to take it upon my own shoulders, as you know, with a little bit of nerves, I went to CPAC with that information about Confederation, about the Constitution, about the lack of authority of the federal government, all of that stuff. And I didn't necessarily know if they put it out there or not. I give them the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, they did not put that video out. But what I was kind of hoping to achieve, or at least be confronted with, was media people challenging me on the stuff that I talk about in the documents that I can prove that are their own documents that prove the case to be true. And interestingly enough, there was not one media question, not one media was there, not one media question. So I went to CPAC. I basically went into the bowels of the dungeon where the dragon's lair is, and I basically told them the whole thing was a lie. The whole entire thing in the system was a lie. And I find it very difficult to believe that not one person would challenge me on that. I can't comprehend how one person would not want to challenge me.
Well,
and at
you
the
know
very
why
least,
they can't? Because they know what you're saying is true, because all those documents are out there in the public record to be found, and they know it.
yeah. Well, but you know, they take that envelope too. Like, you think they'd want to paint me as this crazy pseudo-legal conspiratorial nutbar that, you know what I mean? And they never even took the opportunity to do that. And to take it to the next level, because we're on that topic, when I went to the library archives, the key documents in the Library of Archives in Ottawa aren't there. Like, really, the key documents are not there. And you know, I tried to get Governor General documents where she signed the document, gave it royal assent. Doesn't exist. They don't have it there, because I know she has never signed anything into royal assent, because that's not how the system works. It's a lie. You know what I mean? I tried to get this letters patent of 1947, where Wikipedia will tell you King George signed that to give power and authority to the Governor General, when in fact it was William Lyon Mackenzie King that committed treason and signed that document under the command of King George, who didn't even have the authority to do so, because no monarch had any authority, as you mentioned, since 1901, January 22nd, when Queen Elizabeth died, based on her repeal in Section 2 of the B&A Act, which gave authority to the heirs and successors to her throne. Once she repealed that, there was no authority. And then certainly when it went forward to 1931, that's it. That's all. The Crown has no authority here. Yet they still have the Governor General and the Lieutenant Governors in the provinces getting these exorbitant pays from the public funds for doing nothing.
Rogue
Insane,
Spears got a comment here. He says, how do people take back their rights and freedoms when pirates have hijacked the boat? It's quite simple, Rogue. You don't have to take back your rights and freedoms, because you've already got them, bud.
Yeah. They haven't taken it from you. They're just hiding them. They're
not held on a piece of paper by another man.
Challenge the contracts, man. Every contract.
All they can do is to keep you from. They can keep you from exercising your rights. They can keep you from exercising your rights, but they haven't taken them. You'll never lose them as long as you're breathing. As long as your heart beats and you've got air in your lungs, you still have your rights. You'll always have them. You just have to learn creative ways to contract with other men other than with corporations. People got to change their whole mind shift to go from corporation, a man, what they're trying to feed us, to men and women that are contracting with each other. I think that's one thing we can do for sure.
Yeah, and I'd say you got to challenge the contracts. If you talk about bylaw officers coming to properties, and you got to challenge the authority that they have to even do so, and that's all based on the contracts, and the contracts aren't valid. Then you talk about the fact that they're committing slavery by trying to administer rights over things they don't own. When you're talking to the police officer on the side of the road, you don't have to answer questions. You know what I mean? Like that's in the States, you take the fifth, but you don't have to answer questions. How can they force you to do anything? They say, oh, I pulled you over because you got a tail light out. Okay, so who's the victim in that crime? Because without a victim, there is no crime. You know what I mean? So that's not a crime at all. That's a policy. That's a friggin' act. That's a statute. It means nothing. Challenge contracts, and don't quit. Just don't answer questions. That's the easiest thing I do. What are they going to? Maybe they're going to still arrest you. Maybe they're still going to tow your vehicle. And if you don't want that to happen, then you got to go into the game and you got to play the game with them, and you got to give them the driver's license. You got to start answering their questions and all that stuff. But if you're willing to go to jail for 24 hours or 48 hours because they have to hold you for so long before they release you with charges, I would say the same thing. Even when they do that and they take you to jail, don't speak. You don't have nothing to say. Remember, they tell you that all the time, like anything you say will and can be used against you. If you don't speak, they have nothing to use against you. It's very simple. And it's not easy. Simple and easy are two different things, guys. That's the real thing.
What did they do to Lindsay? What did they do to Lindsay when she decided not to play ball? What did they do to her a bunch of times when she decided to challenge jurisdiction? On the cooler for half an hour downstairs. They kept her in jail. They actually scheduled 2 court appearances in 2 separate courts at the same time, guys, just to try and screw her up. But
so there's an example
God
too.
love her. She's tough.
Yeah, but you got to be willing to fight. That's why we said, Crow, you say it all the time. You got to be strong and you got to be willing to fight. If you're not willing to fight, then this isn't the path for you to take. It's that simple. But when you look at Lindsay's situation, you remember this. So if everything that we say is horseshit, if it's all bullshit, if it is all conspiracy theory crap and it's not real, I would question this. There was a point in time during Lindsay's proceedings, we did a show on your channel about this, and we talked about both of us going down to the courthouse to help her deal with this situation. And we thought maybe that's the way we'll do this, because she is strong and she knows a lot of stuff and we know a fair bit, whatever. So we thought we'd help. Anyway, as it turned out, we decided we wouldn't go because we thought it might cause her more problems than help her. However, when she went there, you know this, what happened? They had a whole bunch more sheriffs in the courthouse than they normally ever do. Because for some reason, we were a threat. Why would we be a threat if everything we talk about is horseshit and conspiracy theory? You know, that doesn't make any sense, right? Why would they put out the resources?
Well,
and she even got the email from the lady, you know, and saying that, you know, well, we've had a look at these guys and they don't seem to be a threat as yet, and the RCMP and all this kind of, you know what I mean? So why would that be the case if this stuff was all bullshit?
Why were they heavily censoring your live on Facebook last night?
Yeah,
talking about income tax.
Yeah, Revenue Canada starting to talk about ways to handle it.
They don't like when you talk about real stuff, man.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%.
Right? They don't like it when the slaves start speaking.
Yeah, and that like I said, that one, the Jones plantation. When I did that live on the Jones plantation and shared that basically explains everything to you guys, man. That's how the world works. The Jones plantation is a good thing on Facebook. It's a little write up, a little blurb there. I don't know how long it is, but it basically tells you the only people that they want running the plantation is their people. Heaven forbid that a slave decides that he wants to run the plantation. That would be awful. How could a slave run a plantation? Forget the fact that you've worked in the plantation your whole entire life. You know the ins and outs of how it works. How could you manage a plantation? Just, you know, I mean, it's funny, actually. It's quite funny. 2 wings of the same bird. That's how it is, man.
Yep.
I don't know. I think the bottom line, guys, is you gotta be willing to take it back
here, and they put these. Yeah. They're going to do brutal things to you guys. That's something you got to understand. In this fight, the minute you are, the Japanese have a saying for it, and I don't know how to pronounce it in Japanese, obviously, but the translation into English is simple. The nail that sticks out gets hammered. And that's the truth. If you're going to go against this criminal, tyrannical system that's been in play for I don't know how many decades, a long, long time, well before even the turn of the century, way back probably to Roman times or even before that, you're going to be nailed. If your nail's sticking out, you're going to get hammered. You know, that's one reason why I guess I should call this channel Hammerhead Garage, because I understand that, right? I get that simple premise that to be different or to go against the norm. It's like that kid in school when you're growing up, that one kid that, you know, the kid that would never do what the teacher said. He was always disrupting things and pulling other kids' hair and, you know, like sitting in the corner or whatever. Back in my day, they didn't sit you in the corner. They just swatted you upside the head. There was no corner sitting. There was no timeouts. There was just violence, right? And Gordy could probably relate to that too. I mean, that's the way things used to be. But if you're going to go against the norm, man, it's going to be hard. It's the hard road. It isn't the easy road. If people are looking for comfort, living in the private is not for you, probably. And that's just me being truthful. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just telling you the actual truth of it, right? You have to be willing to stand up for yourself. And no matter what they do to you, even if they set you on fire, you have to be able to sit there and take it. You have to be able to stand, weather the storm. They're going to throw you in the dungeon, or they're going to feed you to the lions, or whatever it is they do nowadays. You can't waver. You have to fight to the end, right? That's the only victim we really got, is truth is our duty, like it says on the banner here right underneath of us. That's your duty as an honorable man or woman, in my opinion, on this planet, is to be truthful. And that means even the truth you don't want to see and the truth you hate. That's the stuff you really got to look at, right? But it's so deep, guys. It can't be covered in one session. The leather strap. Yeah, I remember that. The ruler too.
Yeah, the meter stick and the old leather strap. The bottom line is very simple. I don't know if it's a maxim, a law, or an old quote, or whatever the fact is, but you have no rights if you're not willing to fight for them. That's it. That's all. And they've taken everything that we have as rights and they've turned them into privileges. And we know that, and we know the corruption, and we know what's going on, and we know it's only going to get worse. And if we're not willing to fight, and I don't mean violence, I just mean fight in our rights, with everything that we have, then we can't complain. We don't have any rights. People say all the time, like, if you don't vote, then you don't have an opportunity, or you don't have a right to speak up about the system if you don't vote. And I would tell you it's the exact opposite of that. If you vote, you have no right to speak up against a system, because you've taken the role as a voter or a citizen, and you've given your rights over for privileges that they're going to grant for you. So you have no rights at that point in time. If you didn't vote, that's when you have all the rights to speak out against that system, right? 100% of that. It's funny. I said this before.
Yep. K4NG Kong from Australia says, many died and bled for our freedoms. The least we can do is the reading and stand in our rights. Absolutely,
yeah,
man. 100%.
And I seen that comment come up on the screen. That's why I wanted to say what I was going to say. You go back to the World War II. Just we'll go to that point, for example, and from this landmass, and I'm sure it was in other countries as well. There was literally people here that lied about their age to join the military because they literally believed that they were fighting for the freedom of the world at that point in time. 16, 17, 15-year-old boys going to war, knowing that they were kids, lied about their age to go there. Then they go, Canada, it's a big thing with Normandy, the beaches of Normandy and stuff like that. So you can imagine what these kids felt like coming up in them boats on the beaches of Normandy and watching thousands of their brothers getting cut down, and still having the courage to jump out of them boats and storm that beach and ultimately take that beach, which turned into a massive part of that whole scenario and that whole war. And yet here we are today, all of those things that they fought for, even though we've learned that those were all bankers' wars, they believed what they believed. They were fighting for freedom. They deserve every respect they get. But here we are today, and we're worried about getting arrested or getting tickets because we're standing up fighting for freedom. And just weigh that out and see who's soft and see who's not soft. That blows my mind, man, when we're facing that today.
Can you imagine the level of fear that would have been in those young men's hearts in those landing craft just before they hit that beach? Can you imagine the amount of fear in those young hearts, man? I've been in that type of situation, the life and death struggle. I know how bad, how much adrenaline is flowing through your body, and how your heart's pumping, and that level of anxiety. And it's times 1,000 probably for those guys, because those weren't training rounds coming over their heads. Those were artillery shells exploding on the beach, mortars, MG42 machine guns, live rounds getting fired over them, blowing up other landing craft all around them, people drowning in the water because they couldn't get in because there was anti-tank obstacles on the beach, having to make a 300-yard dash to the edge of the beach where you could hopefully get away from all that murderous fire coming in on top of you. And you just imagine that, right? And that wasn't that long ago, man. 1944, right? What was that? 60 years, 2004. So what? Add 20 to that. So 80 years ago, bro. right?
I know, and now we're afraid to get a ticket or get arrested. It blows my mind, man. It blows my mind,
because we
man.
might
And
be inconvenienced for a minute.
I have a hard time on Remembrance Day because you get all these big celebrations going on, but at the same time, I know for a fact that the majority of these veterans, these people that did sacrifice to the nth degree, the greatest sacrifice you could make, I know for a fact they'd be rolling over in their graves right now with if they could see what's going on in this world and how people aren't willing to stand up against anything. It's funny, like, I don't want to use trigger words, so if this is one, then I'll stop after the first time I say it. You can let me know, Crow. You know more about YouTube than me, but I was doing that video last night, and basically I'm going to talk about what, terrorism shit. So if that's not a flag word, I'll be okay. If it is, then you can tell me. I'll figure something else out. But
I mean, you got to remember that. You got to remember this is just our opinion, right? I mean, we're not trying to make any concrete statements about it or anything. This is just a podcast at the end of the day, right?
So what I want to touch on
is, if you don't think you should say it, don't say it.
No, I know. So what I was going to touch on, and I said it on my live last night, and anyway, basically I was touching on the in the Canadian Criminal Code, and I'm sure it's the same in most other lands around the world. If you look it up in your criminal code, whatever it is for you, you look into the terrorism section. And one of the things that jumped out and blew my mind as I go through that, because in my mind, people can disagree with me all they want. I believe that the fabrication that they call the Canadian government, the corporation that acts as a Canadian government, is in fact a terrorist organization. And I'll leave that at that. But when I read the criminal code, in the criminal code, it talks about, being in trouble. I got it right here. Talks about all the laws that come into play and all of the things that happen within that system. And I'll see if I can find it right quickly where I had that one piece, man. And it was really basically, without reading the whole point in that article, and you can go read it, Section 83 of the Canadian Criminal Code, you'll find it. It basically said, unless there was lawful authority. And it blows my mind that you could manage to have a lawful authority to commit terrorist acts. How does that even make sense? And I'd like to have anybody that can come out and explain that to me.
Well, lawful, the lawful implies common law of the land. Lawful, there's only one rule: do no harm. How is it that is not doing no harm? If you 100%. Want to boil it down to that regard.
So how do you get lawful authority to commit such heinous crimes? And that's what they say right in the criminal code, right? Anyway, and then you see what's going on in the Middle East. We won't touch into that too much, but there's all that stuff going on. And it goes back to simple things like when any country, I won't use the names because I don't know what gets triggered on YouTube, but when any country is going to war, we'll say, with another country, demanding that this other country does this or does that or whatever the case may be, what rights do they have to do so? What contract do they have with this other country to compel them to these things? And then they go in and they bomb citizens and they do all the stuff they do, man. Like, we live in a world that is just egregiously, heinously criminal, and we think that it's okay. But that's why this whole process for me is so anti-violent as possible. I believe we have every right to stand and defend ourselves at every turn, but up to that point, I'm not interested in anything like that, because I think it's more about the evolution of humanity rather than revolution. Too many people use that term, and I always challenge them and check them. Evolution. Because we got to get away from this. We don't need to be going around and destroying everybody else around the world to just rape them of resources and all this kind of stuff, man. We got to start taking care of our own and taking care of people. And nobody in the existing structure anywhere in the world is taking care of anybody. I think we already live in this. People say all the stuff that's coming down the pipelines, one world government, all this new world stuff and everything. Like, we already live in that, because if you look around the world, every bill, act, and statute that's being put down by the so-called governing bodies on the people, these are all friggin' directives and all agendas that are coming from places like the United Nations and the WEF and the WHO. And if that don't tell you we're already living in this one world system, I don't know what I can tell you. It's already here, guys. We're just hoping that they don't get their hooks in deep enough and
No,
that
100%.
we can do something. But it all comes back to common law.
At the end of the day,
right?
we're always, they have a whole series of people working against us, and we've got ourselves.
But we have the masses. That's the difference. That's why they choose to keep us divided, right? That's why they keep us divided with religion. They keep us divided with friggin', it's as simple as friggin' sports teams and your favorite sports team. We're divided on every level. Everybody is always arguing about this or that. Yeah, we're all the same, man. We're all the same. If we can all come together, they lose. That's why they keep us divided with every friggin' turn, man. They keep us divided because they don't want the people coming together.
That's why they censor. That's why they do all that stuff, is to keep people from getting on the same page.
100%, man. We come together, this ends almost instantaneously.
Like you and I said, man. If we were all, if anyone wants a peaceful solution that has how we end all this tyranny, especially in Canada here, and I know the U.S. is going through it, and Australia and UK for sure, man. Holy whistling, what's going on over there? But anyway, if you want a peaceful way of ending it, everybody go sit in the street. Don't go to work. Don't buy gas. Don't do nothing. Just go sit in the street. Make them club you to remove you.
Yeah.
Right? Think about that. Everything will come to a grind and halt. Right? Because at the end of the day, governments don't build roads. Governments don't build infrastructure. Governments don't build anything. It's us that does all of it. We do everything. So if we stop doing everything, what power, who are they going to have left to govern over? If we all stop doing what we've been doing, that means funding them. That means everything. Shut it all down.
That's the biggest thing. Besides the fact that they don't actually do anything. I don't mean
like people are dying of heart attacks and stuff. Like, I don't mean if you need to go to the hospital and you need to get medical care or anything like that. I'm not saying do that and put people in harm's way in that regard. I'm just saying the average man or woman has more power than they could even possibly understand. And if people could have the upper hand, that's all I'm saying.
Beyond, like I said, beyond the fact that they don't actually do anything physically, any of the work physically, they also don't fund it. People say, well, the government funds it, but the government doesn't fund it. The government funds it with the money they stole out of your pocket, and they call it taxation. And they stole it from you. So they're funding it with it. We're not only doing the work, but we're funding the work. We're funding our own slavery by paying these taxes. And the fact remains very simple. As scary as all that stuff might be, we have the numbers. And I've done the math in Canada, and I've told people about it multiple different times. At best, in Canada, what they call Canada, there's 200,000 police, military, and politicians across the whole landmass with a population of 40 plus million people. And even if you go back before the mass immigration, which is a UN directive, emigration, and happened in all countries, even if you go back before that, there was 35 million, 39 million people. So you tell me how 200,000 people can corral 39 million people. They don't have the manpower. That's it. That's all very simple. We don't have to be violent. They don't have the manpower. You collapse the corporate system, the whole thing collapses. And for those of you that are afraid,
that's
and
true.
think, oh, well, what are we going to do after that?
Courts. They got the media. They got everything.
Mm-hmm. But how are they going to, let's say this, how are they going to arrest 10,000 people? Where are they going to house 10,000? Where are they going to put 10,000 people? How many cells do they have to put 10,000 people in? How long are the courts going to be tied up with 10,000 people?
No, I agree there.
Missed it. They don't have the manpower. They don't have the facilities. Everything I've always talked about is numbers.
They're already tied up now.
100%, man. They're overrun now.
2 years behind now, or 3 years behind, or more now.
Absolutely, they are. We're still in court with Norm, not finished yet, and he was arrested in April of 2022. We're coming into 2025 for mischief and causing a disturbance. Imagine.
Yeah. 18
months in jail for mischief.
And who was the victim again?
City of Ottawa.
Did the truck roof that he stood on show up in court?
No. They seized that, but the city of Ottawa hasn't shown up in court yet.
Whoever that man is. And
that's it. That's what they got. The best thing that they got is Norman.
The city of Ottawa.
Yeah, exactly. The best thing that they've got on him is him standing on top of a truck, waving a flag, and talking in amongst a big giant protest with friggin' thousands and thousands of people. He was the one that was committing mischief. So that's how that all plays out. And 18 months in prison for committing mischief is what they're asking for. It's unreal. It's unreal. In the city of Ottawa, again, no victim, no crime. There was no injured party, no damage to property, none of that kind of stuff. Just that's it. That's all. 18 months. Yeah. All we got to do is stand up. You guys see it all the time. They put the memes out all the time on all the social media.
And I guess we can't talk about it too much, but.
No, I'll say anything. I don't care. I'll talk about whatever. They're criminals, man. I don't have nothing to hide about that.
Yeah.
You can ask me any question about it.
They don't have any evidence. I mean, they were shot down on everything. They were all shot down on everything. They don't have one piece of credible evidence at all to bring forward to prove
why
anything.
Would that be?
From
why
what I've heard of this.
Yeah, and why would that be? Because there was no crime committed.
Well, I mean, you've told. Right. It's on paper only.
No crime committed.
It's on paper only. So is the piece of paper going to stand up in court and say that you've done it a grievous harm?
All the evidence brought forward that they want to call evidence was nothing more than hearsay, conjecture, and opinion. And there's no crime in any of that stuff. It's hearsay, conjecture, and opinion. So they all made personal opinions, and they all had different hearsay by talking to different cops, different officers, different liaison, different policy enforcers, whatever the case may be. But there's no victim, there's no crime, there was no property damage, there was no injured party, and so there can't be evidence. That's why they can't bring none forward, because no crime was committed. The city of Ottawa can't be a victim because the city of Ottawa is not a man. It's that simple. You know, like you said it before. Like, would the victim please come forward? I'm here to settle all debts. Break out your checkbook, and let's settle all debts. The victim can come forward. Can the city of Ottawa come forward? No, doesn't exist like that. I wish I could speak freely.
I'd like to see the man calling themselves the city of Ottawa.
Yeah, exactly. Me too.
Yeah, I know. But the minute you do, it's contempt.
I've not yet seen him.
In the dungeon you go.
I got threatened with contempt one time. I kind of lost it one time, and I told them all, the judge and the prosecutors, all of them. See what we're dealing with here, guys? The judge in that case, Justice Legault, would say things such as reasonable doubt.
Yeah, they are pirates, man.
I brought it up a few times. Sorry. I brought it up a few times that the onus is on the Crown to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's what happens in these so-called courts today. You walk into that court, presumed to be guilty, and you're in there trying to prove your innocence, and that's backwards from how these systems are supposed to work. You're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. So the onus is on the Crown to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. They didn't prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and the judge even said in his final statement when he found him guilty, it blew my mind when he said it, but he said, the onus is on the Crown to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. However, it is impossible to prove something absolutely. So he basically admitted that the Crown failed in their only responsibility, but it was okay. He was going to let it go. Blows my mind. I wish I had his bond.
Well, there's no law being brought into these courts. I wish they would allow us to bring the law in.
That's when you get charged with contempt.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's when they charge you with contempt. Try to bring the real law into the court.
Yeah.
Yeah, Norm wasn't given a fair shake.
Listen, guys, we're telling you the truth here. It's all fraud. It's all fraud. Before he even stepped foot in that courtroom, they already knew that justice, that what the outcome was going to be, guys. I 100% believe that in my heart of hearts. They knew before the evidence was even brought in. There was no evidence brought in, but before they even started the facade known as that court, that mischief charge, And how many other charges did they have him on that ended up getting dropped or something?
I don't know. They did a bunch of stuff early on. They changed the original charges from the very beginning. What they wrote on when he was getting his pictures taken and stuff. They changed them. Ended up becoming mischief, and then they changed the mischief charge. They hybridized it, so it was an indictment. And then in the beginning stages, they were requesting. I wasn't involved at that point in time, but Dave Freedom and them guys were involved, and they were requesting a jury trial. Everybody has a right to a jury trial. Then they decided to hybridize the indictment and say that no, we were going to go with a judge, not a jury. Of course, with a jury, there was no way they would have ever found any guilt. So again, they abrogated his rights in that instance. There was another instance in there when I was in there, and they knew I was there the whole time. This was laid on into the situation, and it was always about being translated into English because I'm English and he's French. And there was one gentleman that was driving the truck. Norman wasn't even driving the truck that they seized, okay? He doesn't own that truck, and he wasn't driving the truck, yet they seized it. Anyway, the gentleman that was driving the truck had been approached by the police after Norman's arrest, and he was told by the policy enforcer that you have to leave. He said, yeah, no problem, I'm just going to grab my wife. Anyway, so he grabbed his wife. Within a minute or so, he come back to the truck to jump in and leave, and then they decided at that point in time they were going to seize the truck, and they told him he couldn't leave. They had no lawful grounds to seize that vehicle whatsoever. Now they're going to try to not only seize it, now they're going to try to take the truck, legally steal the truck from him through the court so they can sell it to cover some of their costs or whatever the case may be. They don't have any rights to do that. And even in Bernier, the guy that was in charge of all the protests in Ottawa, the head cop that said he would be the guy willing to bust out the windows if nobody did anything, he even says it clearly in his own statements, which I have. Anybody that was willing to leave was going to be able to leave, with the exception of Norman's truck. So this whole thing has been just a shit show, and I don't know when, but justice is going to come out, and it might be sooner than later, but we'll see. We have to go back. I think as it stands right now, it's January 16th, and it's, they're talking about sentencing and trying to move the motions forward to seize the vehicle and stuff like that, but there's a lot of stuff coming out. Like the big thing for a lot of you guys out there that if you don't know about, you should look at, and it takes effect around the world, is you really should look at and download the Clearfield Doctrine, and that will tell you clearly all courts became corporations since 2008. They don't have the ability to practice law. The justices that are supposed to be the administrators of law are nothing more than employees of a corporation. Yep. That's a key document, man. They're employees of a corporation. They don't have any rights to practice law. And that stands all around the world for anybody going into court. They have the same rights, duties, and obligations
of other corporations, of other businesses, of other commerce. They have those rights and those rights only, because that's what they now are.
Administering their own policies. That's important to know, guys. Right. And all they can do is administer their policies. But again, that goes back to the contracts. And if they don't have a consensual contract and with complete transparency, then it doesn't exist. Who in their right mind? I can guarantee you one thing. I know Norman is not going to sign a contract that's going to put him in jail for 18 months. I know that for sure. He's not going to put his wedding signature to that piece of paper. 100%. And without him doing that, they don't have the lawful ability. Right. And they don't have the lawful ability to do so without him doing that. So this is where we stand. It's an uphill battle. We're fighting, the Clearfield Doctrine, absolutely. Clearfield Doctrine, I first, Crow, you might remember too, I think started out in 1942. Yeah. But then there's an addition to it in 2008 when all courts became corporation. In 1942, it was talking about the government's trading in private paper, which made them a corporation. So the governments had no authority at that point in time. But now in 2008, all the courts became corporations. And I do have the DUNS number for the Ontario Court of Justice to prove that. So I'd like to see the look on the judge's face when that's put in front of him. And then all of a sudden he realizes that he's nothing more than an employee of a corporation, not an adjudicator of justice. Who owns everything? Well, the simple part of who owns the pirates and the principalities and high places, who owns everything comes down to 13 families, two segments of 13 families. And it's basically the central bankers, and it's people like the Rothschilds and the Orsinis and those. So if you look those families up, that's who's in charge of everything. The central banks control the entire world. I just seen recently, I talked about it in one of my lives, The whole world is $300 trillion in debt. $300 trillion in debt. Who's the world in debt to? That's who they're in debt to, those 13 families. So it's a lot. It's a lot to unravel. We throw that
word around, Gordy, a lot. Trillion. Can you give people just a real quick idea of what $1 trillion really is? Around so much now. Like when I was a kid, they used to throw around millions of dollars, which used to be a lot, but now it's billions. Now it's billions.
I have to remember,
trillion, I don't even really comprehend what that is. You know, like,
you're going to attack my memory in my old age here, but a little bit of information overload now. Thanks for putting me on the hot spot. Anyway, if memory serves me,
that's all right.
If memory serves me, though, it's a good point. You're right. If memory serves me, if you were to set on a street corner at any major city, wherever you're from, and give out $1 every second, it would take you approximately 11.6 years to give out $1 million. Okay, so that's that part of it. If you extrapolate that up to $1 billion, then I think it's 36,000 years to give out $1 billion at $1 a second. So then when you talk about $1 trillion, that's another extrapolation. I don't know the numbers to that, but when you weigh out people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and these people that are worth $200 billion, think about how much money that is, guys. And if Elon Musk, who's jumped on the Trump train, if he was actually somebody that actually cared about the people, he has the ability all by himself to wipe out homelessness and hunger around the world and still be one of the richest people in the world, without question. So these people that pretend they're going to do something for you, a billionaire that thinks they care, but make you think they care about you, I'm here to tell you, believe me or not, that's up to you, and that's your journey to walk. 100% they don't.
So let's just say $200 billion. How many human lifetimes would that be, do you think?
Well, you don't know. The average, you think about it. It's not hard to do math. People can do math themselves. What do you make a year? You know? How many years is it going to take you to make? You can't make that. You can't do it, man. You know, if you make $100,000 a year, so we'll do that because that's easy math. If you make $100,000 a year and you do that for 50, 60, 75 years, then how much is that? 75 times 100,000. What's that? $7.5 million. How close is that to $200 billion?
Yeah.
Not even remotely close, man.
No, like it's unreal, not even in the same solar system.
And then how many people actually make $100,000 a year? So if you go down to $50,000, which is that's just a little bit below the average income in Canada, 50,000. I think it's around 60 or so, the average. But if you went down to 50, well, then what would that take you? You know what I mean? Instead of 7.5 million,
this guy's optimism.
It's blown. Chicken feed. Yeah, chicken feed. Yeah. That guy goes.
That's their coffee money, Jason.
Yeah, going to dinner with Musk. It is chicken feed though, because you can't live on that shit, man. Not with the cost of living these days. You can hardly live on $100,000 a year nowadays with the cost of mortgages, rent, whatever the case may be. And then what happens if you don't pay your property taxes? You don't own that property. They're going to come and take it and sell it for a tax sale.
Well, I mean, you don't own your property. You're listed as tenant on there.
Yep.
Tenant is not titleship. Tenant is tenant.
There's one point in time.
You think you own your property, go read your deed.
There's one point in time when you own your property through the mortgage process, and that one point in time is before you sign the title over to the bank. Once you take the mortgage deed, there's a period of time between the mortgage and signing the title. If you took the mortgage and left the bank and didn't sign the title, you actually would own your property. They'd arrest you, they'd go through the whole rigmarole, whatever, but that before you sign that title, you actually would own that property. Anyway, once you sign the title, that's it. Anything you register, you've given away ownership to.
Yep. Yeah, and you guys know that applicant actually means to beg. That's what the definition is, to beg. You're applying for a certificate of registration. The fraud is in the name. Certificate. Certificates aren't titles.
That's right.
A certificate of registration, a certificate of marriage, a certificate of whatever, right? It's all in there. They put it right out there in plain sight for you to learn, to figure it out, I think, anyway.
Some of it's in plain sight, but when you talk like they're talking about
registering you own nothing
car,
and be happy. Yeah, I think we know who that is.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. That there, you own nothing and be happy. When that's one of the things that they're talking about that's off in the future. This is what we're trying to stand up against. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Or we don't want a one world government. I'm telling you that these things already exist right now today. We are already living under a one world government. It's just not obvious because it's been coming through the UN and stuff. And we already don't own nothing. And the only caveat to that is we're not happy because you don't own your home. You don't own your vehicles. In fact, you don't even own your children because you registered them at birth. So these things, we have them in our mind. We have to shift the mindset because everybody thinks this is off in the future, but it exists at this moment. It's just not obvious to us. You know, and registering the car, you want to see about how many people are involved in this big illusion. When you buy a brand new vehicle, that original title, the true title to that vehicle is sent from the dealership to the province or to the state or whatever. It's never given to you, not from moment one. So you don't, even if you didn't register it to them, you still don't have complete ownership unless you ask for the actual title. And that really trips them up a little bit when people go in and ask for the actual title. If you want to go in and purchase it for cost, like Jason, who's got all that cash, he wants to go buy his new Tesla. Anyway, just kidding. But seriously, go in and buy a brand new car for cash. But
don't waste your money on a Tesla, bro, unless you're looking for a bit lighter.
Yeah. But you want the actual title, not the one that they give you the certificate.
You know, when those EVs start burning, that's
even worse. Salt water causes them to burn.
This is why, like I've been researching and found out that we can actually register our vehicle in a private membership club, and that's what I just recently am working on, and I found a way to do it. And once it's registered in there, they can no longer try and say your vehicle isn't registered because it actually is registered. It's just not registered to the province.
Just so they don't have no claim.
I figured it out. I figured out a way to do it, and I'm in the process of doing it. You have to unregister it from your province first, and once it becomes an unregistered vehicle here in Nova Scotia, they're going to try and tell you have to destroy the vehicle if it's not registered. If you can believe that, destroy your own property. No, you can just use that piece of paper for toilet paper. You get it unregistered, and then you can register it with a private membership association like the Common Law Court of Canada, which is, we have 8 members. We're in a board of governors and trustees and beneficiaries, and we're quite able to do it. And we're going to do it. I'm working on that process right now.
100%.
So, it's all about the little things, guys. It's the little ends that you tie together and you put it together. And after you've sewn enough of these things together, it becomes a big thing, right? And just because nobody's done it before, or very few people have done it before, doesn't mean it can't be done. It's already being done, just so you know. People here in Canada, there's also a lot of people in the UK and other places that are running around just fine without any of the government garbage. And so you can work, the person who said you can't work without papers, you certainly can work without papers. It's called living in the private, not acting in the public. You have private contracts with other men and women, not corporations. Therein lies all the difference, guys. If you want to read more about that, go get that PDF I said to get, Living in the Private PDF, and go digging through all the little headlines, titles at the top. There's hundreds of pages in there. Good info, guys. You can do that. Just go on Google. It's all on Google. You can find it there. Type in Living in the Private PDF and download it. And then you can open it up and you can, wherever you are, even on your phone, you can read it.
Don't think that they're not trying to sew up loose ends when they come apparent to them. I'll tell you that. Because so just for an example, you want to go look at the Rothschilds or Rockefellers and all them families. They've created generational wealth, and they've done that by using trusts. Everything that they own belongs to the trust, and they just have use of it. And that protects them from taxes. It protects them from inheritance tax. It protects them from seizure. It protects them from all kinds of things. But why I say they keep sewing that up is I told a friend of mine this because he was having some issues with the corporation that they call the CRA. And I gave him a bunch of information. I told him to look into trust, put his property into a trust and things like that. Well, he's just in the stages of going through it, but he went and looked at it, spoke to lawyers, which, again, Bar Association members, the most corrupt private membership association in the entire world. But they tell him that those trust laws have been changed, so it's not, you can't do that no more. So I don't doubt that that's the case, because I do know that in this landmass they call Canada, they are starting to change trust laws. So they're making it even more difficult as we start to uncover the corruption and realize that the loopholes that they've left open, they're closing them up pretty tightly.
That's all part of their game.
They do it all the time. It's up to us
to figure out ways to open the stuff back up.
The other interesting thing, when I was going to the library archives, I think I mentioned this to you, Crow. So I'm going through old books from the Privy Council, all the information, the old books from the Privy Council. And as I'm going through that, it kind of dawns on me, almost everything that went through those books in the beginning stages of this so-called country of Canada, it was all about corporations. They were making this into a corporation. They were combining these things into corporations. Everything that was in there was corporation this, corporate that, so on and so forth. So it seems to me that looking at that was they were sewing this corporate slavery system together in the very beginning. It was like they were making this patchwork quilt with all these different corporations, these different patches, sewing them all together. And then once they got that sewed up, then they started coming after what they call rights, but are nothing more than privileges, and starting to diminish them from people, raising the taxation, taxing people into poverty, all these kind of things. And every once in a while, you would see a new corporate entity in the books, but that was just them closing up another loophole that they seen was open. You know what I mean? Patchwork quilt. Yeah, irrevocable trust. Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. That scenario. Anyway, everything you own should be in that trust.
Yeah, they still ignore stuff all the time, June, but just don't move off your square. Doesn't matter what they ignore. They don't have the right to deny something that you created. No, not at all. Just stand in your power as a woman. If they take your property and they illegally seize your property, what I would do is get on the phone, dial 911, and say there's a robbery in progress. It's exactly what I would do. If a tow truck company comes and takes your car and it's not registered to the province, it's in a private trust, then what you do is you take a letterhead from the private trust and you write them a letter to the towing company and tell them they have exactly 10 hours to relinquish your automobile. Not only that, but you're not paying for the impound fees or anything. And you're basically putting them on notice that you're going to put a claim against them if they don't release your private property. Otherwise, they're stealing because it's not registered to them. See, when you register your automobile, it's registered to the province. They consider that their property. But when you register it in a private trust, the beneficiaries, the trustees actually own the vehicle. It's theirs for their enjoyment and their use, right? So you got to just get real tough with them, get hard, right? And don't get off your square. It doesn't matter if they ignore it. Keep pushing your papers through, right? This, like Gordy and I were saying before this, we were talking a few minutes before I went live here. This is all coming to a head, guys. The boiling point is awfully close. I think it's closer than most of you realize to boiling over here. We're getting some real truths in the last little while here. Things are starting to come to a head, and we're learning more about this stuff all the time. And I know you guys are too. And it's a lifelong journey, this whole thing. And we're gonna see it out. We're gonna see it through to the end, right? No matter where that takes us. There's my friend Susan. I just want to point out Susan here, guys. She's been a follower on my channel for as long, pretty much, as I've been on a channel here, and she's always a voice of reason. She's a very intelligent lady, and I appreciate her very much. I always look to her for comments. I always read her comments because she's always got something very relevant to say to the conversation, and I respect her immensely. And I'm glad to see you on here, Susan. We love you.
So when they ignore things, like that's what they're going to do, right? So we talked about this the other night, I think.
But anyway, it's a learning.
In the situation with ignorance, we'll talk about tickets, for example. Remember, we talked about this the other night. And again, it comes to it's only for the strong people that are willing to be willing to be in the fight. But you get a ticket, whether it's in the U.S. or in Canada, you have 72 hours basically to return that ticket. And the ticket in the very beginning is a contract presented to you by the policy enforcer. So when you're going to return the ticket, conditional acceptance, proof of contract, under full commercial liability and full transparency, so on and so forth. Basically, you're just changing the terms of the contract. You're negotiating the terms of the contract. You're still staying in honor. You're not dishonoring it or whatever that case may be. Oftentimes, we hear that they ignore that too. So if it was me, I would just ignore them. I would send the ticket back within the 72 hours with the conditional acceptance letter. And regardless of what they said, the terms are now on to them to address. If they didn't address it, I wouldn't show up in court. What are they going to do? Probably they're going to set a warrant out for my arrest and come and arrest me. And then I'm going to go to court and I'm going to stand on the square. Like Sean said, don't get off your square. I'm going to stand on the square and I'm going to just say, listen, I sent that back and I've not seen any information providing that they have proof of contract under full commercial liability. So there's no reason for me to be here. And we'll see where they go from there. But that's how I would say you have to do it. You have to stand on your square. You have to be willing to fight the fight, because the ignorance is not that you're wrong. It's because they don't want to tell you that you're right. And it's not an individual situation like you, or it's not an individual situation with Norm or me or Sean or anybody. It's a mass situation that they're trying to keep this whole system afloat. And soon as we start cracking it, it's out there. Once you let the cat out of the box, the cat's not going back in the box. You can go back to Schrodinger's box. If the cat ever gets out of Schrodinger's box, and that whole argument, whether it's alive or dead, disappears. The cat's alive now, right? So once a cat's out of the box, they can't put it back in. So they don't care about you as an individual as much as you think. It's about the system that they're trying to prevent from collapsing. Exactly. That's what they're going to do. Arrest you and charge you for contempt.
So, Lana, what I want to say about this comment here, what I want to say about that, Lana, is simple. That happens a lot.
Yep.
Arrest you for contempt. It may not even be contempt. All it really is that you challenge their authority, and they don't like that, Lana. So how long did they keep you in jail for? I bet you they didn't keep you long. Because like I said, as I pointed out, my friend Lindsay, they put her in the slammer, I don't know how many times. They'd take her out for an hour, put her in for half an hour, take her out. Are you still in contempt? Yeah, back you go. They play those little games. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get you into their jurisdiction. They're trying to get you to come off your square. That's a clever little title, a little thing they do. All you have to do is stay in it long enough. Eventually, they're going to get bored, because these people have really, really short attention spans. They're going to get bored. They're going to move on to the lower hanging fruit. That's what they do. But yeah, they're going to say you're the devil. They're going to say that you're eating children and all kinds of stuff. But that's just what they do, man. They're liars. They don't tell the truth. That's what we're trying to do is to let you guys know what the reality is, right?
When they do that,
look what happened to the Coates boys. Although there can be a lot said about that, but
when they do that stuff, like drag you, like Lana, when they drag you back into court, charge you with contempt, what they're trying to do, and this even goes a little bit deeper into the whole common law scenario, natural law, living man or woman, they're trying to break your spirit. And ultimately, they don't have any control over your spirit. That's what they're trying to control, because that's what we all are. And if they break your spirit, that's how they win. That's why standing in your square is important. Don't let them break your spirit. And what contempt? What was the contempt that they've charged you with? Yeah, they do that. They'll find you guilty in your absence, but then you have to go back to the contracts. Challenge the contracts. What contract do they have? And I told you, simple contract law. You cannot force a contract onto anybody. It has to be consensual. You know, so you have to keep fighting the battle. They're not going to let you win easily. And there's no, people say nobody wins in common law or any of this kind of stuff. And you're right, nobody does. It gets dropped because they have no jurisdiction. That's what happens. The case gets dropped or dismissed because they have no jurisdiction. So you can't go look up into old case law and find out that Sean went to court and he won in common law because he stood as a living man. It doesn't exist. It won't happen. They don't want the masses to see that stuff. It's just dismissed because they have no jurisdiction. It's a hard road. And sometimes talking too much is what hurts you. Sometimes you got to talk as little as possible. And like Carl Lentz will say, and Crow talks about it a lot, maybe it's don't even talk at all. Just speak in documents. Write everything down that you have to say.
Just a notice, guys. Just a notice. Put in I, a woman known as Lana Smirnoff, not bend to this hierarchy. I stand as a living flesh and blood woman before you and not as a person. You can even quote Article 16, the United Nations, if you want, although we found out recently that a lot of courts don't abide by any of that because they're criminals and they're corporations. But under Article 16, United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, I waive my right to be seen as a legal person. But the best scenario of all is not to even be thrown in, to be even go to their court, although my understanding is you were drugged in there. So they're forcing you to contract. Essentially, when you boil it all down, that's what they're doing. They're forcing you to contract, right? But at no time do you ever have to contract with them. They can threaten you. They can do the rainbow unicorn machine that you have to, you know, all these different weird rules that you have to follow and everything else. No, just continue standing in your truth, because at the end of the day, light will always shine on these cockroaches, right? Light always shines on dark eventually, and dark can't live in the light. They're two different realms. They can't exist in the same space. Right. But anyway, what do you think about it, Gordy?
It's the same. I think it's all about contracts. I think that's why we got to start weaving everything together. And you can use, if you're in court and they're charging with contempt and all this kind of stuff, then I would start throwing that question at them. Do you claim to own me or my property? And if you do claim to own me or my property, I would like to see the contract where you purchased me or my property. You know, and if you don't claim to own me or my property, then why do you think you can administer rights over me or my property? You can rescind any contract at any point in time. So that they don't have any contracts, and they're not going to like this stuff, man. The judge in Norm's case, he did not like any of the stuff that I brought to the table. They don't like it. They're going to bully you. They're going to try to ignore you. They're going to throw you in the clink for a little while because they're trying to break your spirit. They're trying to get you to slip up and then try to get you in their jurisdiction because you slipped up.
Yep.
Remember, just being in courts, you're kind of complying to you're acquiescing to their authority by showing up. But if you have to show up, I would say, especially for people in the U.S. and even some people in Canada, you should probably start watching some David Straight stuff if you want to learn. Because when he goes into court, he never gives them any authority. He owns the court from the moment he walks in as the highest authority in the court, because that's what you are. You know, and if you're not comfortable speaking, just write things down. Don't speak. You should speak as less as you can, honestly, anyway, because everything you say can and will be used against you. And remember, the wording, the terminology is huge, man, because they owe everything that you say. You think it means something, and they know it means something else. So also another good thing that you can do in court to really upset them judges. And again, it's going to be tough, but take a Black's Law dictionary with you and an Oxford dictionary and ask them right out of the gate, can you please tell me which dictionary we're operating here from today? They hate that. You're calling them right out right there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Do you remember when our good friend did that in court? The judge, you could see the purple vein from 50 yards away on his neck.
They hate that.
Yeah. He threw her out into the clink immediately when she did that.
Right. They hate that stuff because they know that you're catching them in their lies.
Another thing they don't like is when you surrender the birth certificate in court. Yeah.
And there's another statement, people, that you can make too, right out of the gate. The very first statement, if you want to make in court, Sean has it too, so he can find it probably, and he can post it exactly what it is, but I'll give you the basis of it. Basically, when you go to court, they're making the assumption that you're already a minor and you're incapable mentally of handling your own affairs. So right out of the gate, the very first thing that you should be talking about is I come here of a full age of maturity, and I am capable of handling my own affairs. By special appearance is good, but that's the key, because they look at you as a minor child or a mentally incapable individual. And why do they look at you like that? Because they use the foreign language called legalese that you are not proficient in. And that's how they look at you like that. That's why the Black's Law Dictionary and the Oxford Dictionary is key, that they hate it. And that's why making the statement or in a writing, in a notice, that you are here, you are of a mature age, and you're capable of handling your own affairs as a living man or woman, and whatever your first name is. And don't ever lay claim to the name. You can actually even throw that at them if you want when you talk about the name and the birth certificate and so on. You actually are committing fraud by claiming the name that's on the identification, because you didn't create that. It's not your creation. You don't own it. So you can't claim that. They're trying to get you party to a criminal offense by claiming ownership of that name. Don't do it. Separate.
Yep. No, one person we know did. They surrendered the birth certificate right to the judge, right in court, on the record. And he didn't like that at all. He ran from it, actually. It hit the floor, and he ran away from it as quick as he could. Well, because some of them know, guys. Some of them know what's going on. They know the rules, right?
They know. I actually said that to Norm, actually, and I was joking when I said it, but I don't really mean it as a joke. And I said, we go back for sentencing in this bullshit scenario. And I said, we'll just walk in there, Norm, and you can throw your birth certificate on the table. And before we leave, just tell the judge, you can just let me know when I can come back and pick this up. Because that's the only thing you have the authority to sentence, is that fictional identity that you created. So let me know if it's 6 months, 18 months, whatever, I'll come back and pick it up later. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't like that. I can tell you, when we crack this thing with Norm's case, it'll be blasted all over the place. Because I have no fear of this corporate fiction identity bullshit that's out there. I don't care, and I'm just committed to cracking it, and I can't wait till the day I do, so I can show people. I will not be one of them guys. There's another thing when you do common law stuff. Oftentimes what happens is they get you to sign non-disclosure agreements if they're big situations and stuff like that. So what is a non-disclosure agreement? Well, basically they're going to get you to sign an agreement to not disclose anything within that agreement. But what you're actually doing, if you sign that agreement, is you are becoming party to the crime. Because if you know of a crime or have knowledge of a crime, it is your duty as a man or woman to report it. So if you sign a non-disclosure, you're now becoming complicit in a crime because you're not disclosing it. So that's the whole upside down inverted reality we live in. They're going to use a document that would be actually illegal in the legal world called a non-disclosure agreement by having you sign that, so you are party to a crime because you're not going to admit to a crime because you signed an agreement that you know of a crime. That's how retarded it is. A non-disclosure agreement wouldn't even be legal.
Not only that, but the non-disclosure agreement is fraud in another way, because they're trying to coerce you by threat of intimidation, violence, or incarceration for signing the damn thing, or if you don't sign it.
Yeah, the only way they're going to give you
it's breaking their own law.
Right. The only way you're getting your victory in that situation is if you sign it. So there you go. Threats of intimidation. Exactly like you said, Crow. It's a fraud all the way around.
Yeah.
Yeah, people think they're winning.
Preaching to us about how you got to follow the criminal code. Listen, let me tell you something. They break the criminal code at least 100 times a day, if not more. They break it more than we do.
All the time, man.
Only
every day that goes by. Every day that goes by. Look at the bills and acts and statutes being passed here in this landmass of Canada. Bill C-11, the censorship bill. B-63, the online harms bill. C-293, you know, the Vegan Act or whatever you want to call that. All these bills. Bill C-63, the Online Harms Act, was brought forward by Arif Bajani, I think his name is, and he's actually the Attorney General of the country, if that's what you want to call it. So he's supposed to be the highest level of law in the country, connected to the United Nations, and he's bringing forward in the Parliament building a bill or an act that actually violates international human rights laws. So all of these bills actually are in violation of human rights, violation of all these international documents, and yet not just passing them in the Parliament is a crime, but even discussing them in the Parliament is a crime. So even when the opposition parties are pretending to oppose to these agreements, the fact that they're discussing them, they're all committing crimes. Every day in that theater of the Parliament, they are committing crimes. Every moment of every day. And we just sat here and we allowed them to do it.
You mean the Kabuki theater in there?
100%, the Kabuki theater.
The $20,000 a minute theater.
It's unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. And then people buy into that. They say, "Oh, look at Pierre. He really give it to Trudeau today." Meanwhile, they're all out having dinner, steaks and lobster together after the fact. It's like WWE wrestling. Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage
behind closed doors.
Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, they're mortal enemies until you see them at the club after the show and they're having beers together. Honest to Lord, man.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's absolutely 100% true. It's in people. They love that drama. It's almost like Coronation Street. I'm really aging myself with that reference, but I grew up where my parents were watching that. My grandparents watched that, and they love that drama. Eh? It's like The Price is Right. Like the woman that, you know, in the front row that she bet $1, man, and she's up there spinning the wheel. You know what I mean? Like, it's just unbelievable what goes on. And see, I'd rather know about all this, right, than not know. I don't know if that makes me weird or different. Probably both. But I'd rather know what's being pulled over my eyes. You know.
Sometimes
it's all comes with its own problems too.
I know. I was just going to touch on that and give a little funny story, but it's all that stuff. The bread and circus. People say the bread and circus stuff, the Roman Colosseum days and all that kind of stuff is all the football, baseball, hockey and stuff. Well, I'm going to tell you, the bread and circus too is also what happens in these congresses and these friggin' legislatures and these parliaments. That's bread and circus too. That's just keeping the masses busy and entertained while they destroy society. But when you talk about, I'd rather know. Well, I'm a proponent of that too. I'd rather know. However, that being said, as I touched on before on my Facebook, when I posted the solo photo of the blue crayon, and if you know, you know. Sometimes knowing is a heavy burden to carry. So the blue crayon, I'll explain to you guys as well, but Crow knows about it, obviously. But anyway, in The Simpsons, of course, The Simpsons have predicted so many things, and that's funny in itself. But in The Simpsons, Homer Simpson is a big dope, and all of the so-called father figures in the mainstream media are painted as dopes and stupid guys, and they just bumble around and go to work and whatever. But we all know Homer's kind of stupid. So as it turns out, there's a reason why that was. And back in the day when Homer was a young child, he was in his bedroom with Mo Sislak playing, and he decided that it was intelligent for him to try to put an entire box of crayons up his nose. Well, Homer being Homer, of course he succeeded in that briefly, but then once he got the entire box of crayons up his nose, of course his nose was filled and he sneezed, and then life goes on. So here we are 30, 40 years later, and he's having headaches, or I don't know what the reason was, but he goes to the hospital, and the doctor, do you remember the name of the doctor? I don't remember his name.
Dr. Nick Riviera, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's him. Yeah, no, that's a hack doctor. I mean the other doctor, the Indian guy. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, They found through doing
Dr. Hibbard.
Dr. Hibbard. Yeah. So they found through some X-rays that all of a sudden Homer had this blue crayon that was puncturing his, putting pressure on his frontal lobe, which is basically like a lobotomy. So they removed it via surgical process, and then all of a sudden, man, Homer became wicked intelligent. And it was a magical experience. He spent 2 or 3 weeks with Lisa, and they They were going to the theater. They were going to the museum. I think actually that's the episode where Homer writes on the chalkboard and they figured out the God particle gene or whatever the case may be with the math. But anyway, poor old Homer couldn't deal with that. It was too much for him to be smart, too heavy on him to be smart. So he went back to Moe's Tavern, and Moe took the old ice pick and tapped the blue crayon up into his nose. And basically what that did was dumb him back down so he could exist in this society that's so inverted and upside down. So I posted that. Sometimes, you know, I carry a blue crayon with me just in case. Sometimes it gets a little bit heavy, but I don't think I'm actually going to use it.
Well, I mean, you got to have moments of humor, guys, or else we'd all be in the lunatic asylum, really. So, I mean, when we can laugh, we should really make an honest effort to try and do it. I mean, I'm as guilty as the next guy of not laughing at anything, because there's not very little to find funny now. But, you know, that's one example of something that is quite humorous. But a lot of what they did in that cartoon, if you want to call it that, it really wasn't. It was a cartoon for adults. It just covers every facet of human existence, pretty much, in all their episodes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, Matt Groening's a Freemason, so that's part of it. And some people say they predicted things because of Matt Groening being a Freemason, but I met a new friend the other day. I had a good conversation with him, Gilbert. He's a good guy, and we were talking about that. And I'm not so sure if it's that The Simpsons actually predicted anything happening in the future, or it was predicted programming on a subconscious level. You know, they do that a lot too, right? They put this stuff out there, and they get our minds into creating these realities that they exist, right? Because ultimately these people in charge, this small group of people that's in charge, they can't do anything that they want to do. They have to somehow trick us subconsciously. They got to get us to create the realities they want. Oftentimes we do it out of a fear, intimidation, whatever the case may be. So it's all up to us. And I'm guilty for sure of not living. I'm just existing. And I got to get better at actually learning to live in the moment, enjoy life as much as we possibly can, because it is short. I know I'm sacrificing a lot doing what I'm doing, missing my family and things like that, but I also know I'm trying to make sure they have a future. So I'll own that, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy life's small moments at some point in time, and we got to be better at that. We can't let the weight of the world break our spirits, because ultimately that's the only way they get to victory. That's our only path to victory, is breaking our spirits, guys.
Yeah, we got to get better at interacting with people too, maybe that don't understand or have taken a different path or have been duped, because we were all asleep at one point, right?
Yeah,
myself included. And I struggle with that on a daily basis, is being kind sometimes when I don't want to be, but it's just something you got to do. There's so much craziness going on right now that you should take a second and take 2 or 3 big deep breaths before you even talk back to somebody or comment on their situation or whatever. And you'd be better off just going over and like giving them a handshake or touching them on the shoulder or something, you know, and saying hello or to them or whatever, right? But it's how we get better. It's how we grow. It's ultimately how we're going to defeat the forces of evil, because, guys, I don't think there's anybody out there that would in 2024 say that this is not a fight of good versus evil, because it most certainly is in every aspect, every realm, right? It's a fight. We're in a war, guys. I know people don't want to hear that. They don't want to admit it, but we are in a war, and we've been in a war for a while, right? And we got to get better. We got to get stronger, and we got to get smarter. And they're not going to do that for us. They're not going to show us how. We got to do it ourselves, right? Ultimately, like you said, I mean, I believe in the Lord. I believe in God's power, and I submit to Him. But at the end of the day, each individual person, each individual man or woman is responsible for themselves, and for saving themselves, and for doing the work that's required. Right? God may wins in the end, and He does, right? And He wants to help us, but we got to do our part. And a lot of us aren't doing our part, right? And that's the truth of it. And I don't know exactly why. And maybe it's got to get worse before people will finally understand. Probably. But I hope it doesn't get to the point where it's just so far gone that it'll be very, very hard to do anything. Right? I hope it doesn't ever get there. And you know, a lot of people are panicking about what the government, the acts and statutes and everything. You got to understand, guys, that it's all desperation. What happens to a regime when it's folding? They get tyrannical in every aspect. They get fanatical about all these new, greatest and latest tyranny aspects that they're trying to dump on our shoulders. So that to me is a sign. It's a symbol of their ultimate desperation. I mean, look at how much the world is waking up to what's going on around it. The awakening is, I would say right now, it's in a snowball effect, tumbling out of control. Probably 1 million people a day or more are waking up to what's going on around them, and they didn't plan on that. They didn't plan on people waking up that quick. See, they were hoping they were going to get us all in chains and locked down and everything else, and living in 15-minute cities before everybody woke up. But it's not turning out that way yet. I hope it never does, but in any case, yeah.
I don't think it's going to turn out that way. So a couple points off, spin off on what you're saying there. So me and you know, we talk about it a lot in respect to each other for sure. I'm not going to say I'm a God-fearing man or anything like that. I do believe that there's something far bigger than me that created all of this existence that we live in, a greater power for sure. But I'm going to talk about that in a sense, and I've said this to you before as well, and you understand it. Like, first of all, there's no savior out there that's going to save anybody that's not willing to save themselves. And the way I'm going to talk about that, with total respect to, no disrespect to anybody, but with total respect to God and the Bible and all that kind of stuff, I want you to go back a little bit from the biblical text and the stories of the Bible and look at Noah, and look at the story of Noah in the ark, and ask, and I want to ask you guys, who was saved when the entire world was flooded? And the only people that were saved in that scenario was the crazy people that were building the ark, Noah and his family. Everybody else that weren't willing to save themselves, weren't willing to prepare, weren't willing to do any of the work, they ended up perishing in the flood. And when you look at God, if we are created in God's image and we are the hands of God, then I believe that we're supposed to stand and take action and fight for our own selves. I don't think that, like Trump, any of these so-called saviors around the world, I don't think anybody's willing to save anybody that's unwilling to save themselves. You know, I'm not, and I don't say that to put fear in people's mind or anything like that. I just believe that until you're willing to start taking action to save yourself and your own family and things like that, that's where the snowball takes hold, that they can't stop us no more. When we all realize that we're our own individual saviors and we come together with that knowledge, this ends. They can't stop us, man. We are the all-powerful on this world. You know, God may be all-powerful, you know, and built everything, but we're the ones living in this reality is what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's not in a disrespect way, but we're the ones living here. We have to be the ones that are willing to save ourselves. And they know they're losing. That's why they're getting so tyrannical. And I believe this too, with Project Looking Glass and all of these things in the quantum computers. It does not matter what they do, what information they put into this computer. It does not matter. They know that humanity wins this battle. And all they're doing at this point in time is trying to take as many with them as when they go. I don't know the path to get there. I don't know what the timeline is, but they know. They know for sure that we win. And they're just trying to take as many souls with them as they can. So we just don't want to be included in the souls that they take down with them. We all have to be better. We all have to live lighter. We all have to be happier. You know, all that good energy. And when you talk about the waking up scenario every day and the Great Awakening, people think that that's like a great big magical thing, but I think it can be so many simplistic little things. For an example, one more individual questioning the authority of the police officer, whether it's in a traffic stop or on the street, just questioning the authority. Again, that raises a vibration because now one more person is cracking the illusion. And these little tiny increments, they seem like small, insignificant steps in the big direction when some of us are doing things on a far larger scale, but every one of them incremental events is breaking through the illusion. And once this illusion crashes open, They can't keep the cat in the box no more. It's all over for them.
No, I agree with that. And you're right. It doesn't have to be any great big awakening. It can be a billion little steps.
Yeah.
And should be, and realistically speaking, will be, because that's the way people are in real life. But no, I mean, it's just keep trying, guys. That's got to be the ultimate thing. A lot of people are quick to jump on the bandwagon and say, it doesn't work, nothing works, and I'm just gonna, okay, but try something else, right? Did you ever hear the term or the expression that your failures are your true victory? Because that's what leads you to a victory, is all the things you tried that didn't work. That's a learning experience unto its own, unto itself. And unfortunately, I know in my life, I got the exam long before I ever got the lesson. That's how I grew up, right? That's a hard way to learn things, guys, just for the record. But that you will learn that way. There's no question, but it's a real hard way to learn. And I would have much rather had the lessons before I got the exam, right? But in any case, keep trying, keep pushing.
Yeah, there's no failure.
Don't give up.
There's no such thing as failure. The only time failure would be relevant is if you quit. All failure is you learned another way that it didn't work. You keep moving on to try another avenue. Failure only exists if you quit. Otherwise, it's just a step in there. It's just a step towards success. Each one is another step towards success. If this didn't work, you try this. This didn't work, you try. Eventually, you're going to figure it out. All them failures are nothing more than steps. That's all they are. They only matter if they stop you. And if you stop on that step, okay, then failure won. But you don't stop. And everybody here, when you talk about awakening or whatever, it's a collective thing. So everybody on here, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem like you're doing something, you're still doing something. Even being here, watching, being open, willing to spend some time and hopefully try to learn another little nugget or two, that's all part of it. Everybody's taking part in this. It's bigger than any one of us. It's a matter of all of us. We're the ones that are here to change the world. For all the hard that there is and all the hardships that we're going through, and some people struggle, we're here for this exact moment in time to do exactly what we're doing. And divine guidance will happen. I've had it happen to me. I'm sure I've had it happen to me along this journey. And it'll happen to every one of you. It's just a matter if you recognize it or not. Good luck. There's no such thing as luck. You create your reality, and it's not luck. Maybe some things that happen that seem lucky, that's probably divine guidance protecting you from something. So that's how I see things, I guess. I don't know. Each and every one of us are making this change every day. No, and we're getting closer.
We are getting closer. There's no question. There's an energy that's around us now that I've noticed, and it's been here a while, but it's really prevalent right now. It's like everybody's waiting for the shoe to drop. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And they're being forced to, right?
That doesn't necessarily mean that the outcome is going to be bad.
No, it doesn't, man. See, the thing is, people are so scared of all this collapse that's happening. Let's say the collapse of the economy is a good example. There's big threats of the economy collapsing. So while that will be a very treacherous time and a very difficult time, you have to understand that the entire economy is nothing but a falsehood anyway. So it is going to collapse. The only caveat, the only difference is, like I said this to you the other night, and I said this on my live last night. We know for a fact that the world is changing drastically, and it's doing it now, and it's going to continue to change drastically. The only difference is who's in charge of the change. So it's either us that are going to change it to benefit us, so we can actually live instead of just existing in this debt slavery system, or they're going to change it and they're going to make the debt slavery system a lot harder to live in. So it's changing regardless. There's no option. You can't hold on to the past. The past does no longer exist. It's going to change. Tomorrow's coming. You can't live in yesterday. So we got to accept it. It's going to change and look at the benefits of it. We're no longer going to have this fiat, fake monopoly money currency system. We're going to have to figure out another way. That's okay. Will the transition be easy? Probably not. It'll be tough. but tough times make strong people. That's where we're at. So we have to do that. We have to accept it, and we have to be okay with it. We need a great reset. You know what I mean? We need one.
I honestly think that a large portion of the division that people talk about has a lot to do with the geographical landmass of this nation, Canada. It's so vast, and we're talking to each other and hating each other over social media, when if we were to just go face to face and talk to each other as human beings, or I don't even want to use that term because you know what it means, but talk to each other as men and women face to face, a lot of these hatreds would melt away. It's like you're angry at your neighbor, but then you go talk to him for half an hour, and then all of a sudden you're friends again. You understand what I'm saying? Like
100%.
It's just, there's so much area between us. There's so much vastness between us. If we lived like in the States, I know there's 4 or 5 states all butt up against each other. I mean, you can get around. There's a lot larger population down there. You can get around quicker. Canada is a large place. I don't know if you guys have all been from one side to another, but I have, and I've been to the north part too. I've been in the Arctic. I've been way up there, 200 miles from Greenland. You know, it's a vast area. When we left Edmonton and we got up to Yellowknife, and I flew north, you wouldn't believe how much land is up there. You wouldn't believe it. It's just unbelievable. It's just vast expanses of nothing. And there's even communities up there, believe it or not. But it's too bad we couldn't talk face to face, because it would go a long way towards bringing some of these divides into down, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Men and women, we can't be fighting amongst ourselves. That's why they create all these divisionary tactics to keep us fighting amongst ourselves, because the systems, they want to keep us doing that. It's like, you see these little memes, and you got the king and couple of his little disciples standing up, and they're looking out the window of the castle, and they look out, and there's a great big mass of people, and some of them have pitchforks, and some of them have, fire sticks and things like that, and they're all marching on the castle because they're tired of being enslaved or taxation or whatever it was that they were doing to them at the time. And the guy looks at the king, and he's like, well, what are we going to do now? They've got us so outnumbered. Oh, well, it's no problem. You just make sure that the people with the pitchforks know that the people with the fire is the enemy. And what does that mean? You're going to have them people fighting amongst themselves while they continue to reap the resources and rape us. You know what I mean? That's how simple this is, right? We got to stop fighting amongst ourselves, man. It's only a small group of people that are in charge of this whole mess. The rest of them are nothing more than beta male puppets. It's interesting. I get a lot of grief. I get a lot of stuff thrown at me. People attack me or whatever, and I know what the reason they do that. It doesn't really affect me, but the one thing I'm always going to stand by, and the only thing I'm always going to say, is I'm not the enemy. Well, you can agree with me, you can like me, you can not like me, you can disagree with me, but I can assure you 110% from my heart and soul, I'm not the enemy. I'm just somebody here that's trying to right the ship and get us out of this freaking corporate debt slavery system and get us back to living instead of just existing. That's all I'm trying to do. And the reason I do it is because I have 10 grandkids.
I know.
That's it. That's all.
You get 10 grandkids and you want to see them grow up in a world as good or better than you had, better preferably.
That's it, 110%, man. And the way I see the world going right now, if nobody does nothing, it's going to be a horrible situation, kind of akin to the Hunger Games. And I certainly don't want to see that.
No.
But anyway,
because that's not living. You're not really free.
No, it's not. What is freedom? People don't even really understand what freedom really is. That's the key of it all, because the truth of the matter is, Crow and I are both 52 years old. And in all honesty, we've never lived a free day in our lives. Not inside this system. And we didn't know any better. We learned a lot along the way, but the truth is, you need a license for everything. You need permission for everything. You need this for everything. Now we're getting to the point where we're kind of living free, but we're still not completely, because we're still tied to this economic debt slavery system to some degree, even though we try to step out of it as much as we can, all of them things. But none of us have ever been free for an entire life. When you need licenses, like when you go back to law, we talked about this before too. You cannot make something that's unlawful lawful just by giving it a license. If it was unlawful before the license,
Nope.
it has to be unlawful after the license. You know, this is the thing.
Yeah, that doesn't change.
No, exactly, bro. That's what I mean, right? They'll tell you need a fishing license. Meanwhile, they'll let all of them offshore trawlers drag the friggin' bottom of the ocean for one fish and kill everything else along the way. But heaven forbid if you took home 3 bass and you over exceeded the limit, you know, you're going to destroy the whole ecosystem. Like, it's just insane, man.
Yeah, but there's money to be made there for them.
Yeah,
they're not going to make money off the 3 bass you took. It's only going to improve your chances of maybe getting ahead of them.
100%. But then you go back to the $300 trillion in debt to who? You know what I mean? Who? You know what? You know the one contract
that number is astronomical.
The one contract that would change the whole entire game is the contract that these 13 families would have that showed who it was that they purchased this world from. I'd like to see that contract. Who did they actually buy the world from? Did they have a sit down with God at one point in time and negotiate the terms of purchasing the earth? Or was it the Anunnaki, or was it the aliens? Whatever your belief systems are, it doesn't matter. Did these people sit down with these people, and do they have a contract where they purchased the earth and the rest of us were all going to pay rent and lease and all this kind of stuff? Where's that contract? Unreal.
There's a lot of contracts missing from the books, bro, as you found out when you went in the library there.
Yeah, 100%.
Here's some homework for all you guys. Go find a certified true copy of the Income Tax Act on the Queen's Bench. Go find a certified true copy of the Income Tax Act on the Queen's Bench.
That was given royal assent by the Governor General.
I bet you can't reproduce that unicorn.
No, does not exist.
I bet you can't find that unicorn.
No. That's funny how the funny thing. So
I looked for it. I asked for it.
The one thing that's interesting, that's really, really interesting, is the Statute Law Revision Act of 1893, where Queen Victoria basically repealed Section 1 and 2, which nullified the B&A Act and took away the rights of her heirs and successors to the throne after her death. So I asked about it. They didn't have it. Couldn't find it. And then I actually did find the book. I found the book, Statutes of 1893, the entire book, bro. And I went through that book, and that one part of that book is not in that book. And I looked in the 1892 just in case. I looked in 1894 just in case. Statute Law Revision Act, the one key document that proves this thing is a lie, was not there.
Where'd it go?
That's the question. Where did it go? They say it's actually owned by the UK Parliament, so perhaps somebody in England could go to their library and find an actual true copy of the Statute Law Revision Act, but I couldn't find it here in this neck of the woods. Anybody in the UK?
Lots of people on this channel that are from the UK. Go look. If you find it, send us a copy. We'll pay for the postage and your time.
Anybody in the UK, you can go find a B&A Act over there because it's your government that owns it. Our constitutional document you guys own. How does that make sense? All we have in Canada is a copy of it. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Very interesting. But you guys got King William or King Charles over there, and he'll travel around the city in his gilded gold carriage and tell you he cares about poverty. Funny thing about the UK, same as in Canada, everybody talks about elections, and elections aren't going to fix anything. The systems are the problem. The systems are corrupt, and it doesn't matter what puppet is at the head of the game or at the head of the table. And it should be really, really relevant in the UK because Keir Starmer just won his so-called election recently, majority, whatever. And we see what's happened since Keir Starmer took place. It's gotten a lot worse. And then I see the same mistakes being made over there where they're putting out petitions to force them to have a new election, to have a non-confidence vote and all these kind of things. I would say that you're fighting this battle from the wrong battlefield. You guys is a very small country compared to what we deal with in this landmass. And you guys can manage to get hundreds of thousands of people together in a small area fairly quickly and easily compared to what we can do here. So the real true answer is you guys have got to arrest these criminals acting as politicians, and you've got to go in and fix the system. That's how it is. And you're not the criminals. You have to stop thinking you're the criminals. They're the criminals. The answer is for us to remove these politicians, and they're not going to just walk out and say, okay, but we have to remove them, and we have to fix the system for the people. You know, that's the answer over there. I don't know why you would want to go for a new election, because you're only going to put in another guy who's another corporate puppet. And if he's not a corporate puppet to the elite, then the bottom line is he's going to be controlled by the central bankers, or he'll probably be suicided. So ultimately, I'm trying to connect. I'll mention this. I'm trying to connect with people from all around the world: Australia, New Zealand, UK, Ireland, all these countries around the world that are dealing with the same problems that we have here. And ultimately, I'd like to make it so there become one day where the whole world will stand up all together at once. And I think if we can create that, that is going to shake this thing right to the foundations. Rather than have a big protest in one country at one time, if we can get, you know, millions of people around the world to all come together and stand up on one day, that's going to really rattle the cages. Look at how much power that your guys' massive protest has, or look how much power that the convoy might have had to wake people up. You imagine if the whole world stands up at the same time, how powerful that's going to be. So if anybody's out there that is any kind of position,
to happen, bro.
No, absolutely not. That's what I'm saying. I think we can do that. So if anybody's out there, man, you can connect me up, whatever, get in touch with the Crow on the channel, whatever. But that's kind of what I would hope to be able to accomplish.
Anyway, guys, we've been going a long time tonight. We're probably going to wrap it up here. I'm going to bed, I think. I appreciate everybody coming on here tonight. The whole purpose of this chat was to have a chat and an open dialogue, and so that we can formulate new ideas. That's the whole purpose of it. We're not coming on here as people that know everything, because Gordy would be the first to tell you we don't. We learn just like everybody does, and we've learned a lot, but we have a long way to go yet. And many minds make light, many hands make light work, many minds make light work. An idea that's brought forward is never a bad idea. It's never a wasted idea, because from that idea, you don't know what's going to happen, what's going to come from it. There could be something really genius come out of that. That's what Gordy and I work good together, because we have an open dialogue to the point where we bounce ideas off each other and we talk about a lot of different things. And sometimes once in a while, a real nugget comes out of that. Right. And when that happens, it opens up a path to another whole area that we never even thought about. And then the next thing you know, one of us has a conversation with somebody we know about it, and they bring something else to that. So that's where the info comes from, the majority. But we thank everybody for coming on here. You guys are awesome. I've always said it from day one. I got the best subscribers. I got the best people on here, right? And even the haters have a role to play in this whole scenario, right? And I don't care. I mean, it's like the way I look at it is, you say whatever you want, it's not going to stick to me. It's just not. Okay, I'm well beyond it. Well beyond it. So, I mean, if you want to make a video saying how wrong I am, then go ahead, man. Just like some people making videos about how wrong Gordy is all the time. I mean, they're free to do it. We don't care. We're going to keep speaking the truth. The truth is our duty. It may not be your truth, and that's fine too, but it's our truth. And like I always say, the truth, it just sounds different. You ever notice that? Right? They say the best lies are 90% truth. That's what people say.
The truth will set you free, anyway,
bro. Thank you, guys. It will. Absolutely.
Yeah,
our pleasure, June. We'll continue to dig into these things and try. If you can find out, June, any information about that document Gordy asked about, or anything about your parliament that might be of vital importance, pass it on. By all means, make a comment. and we'll find a way to get the information. We always do. But remember, guys, you're not the piece of paper. You're not the thing they're looking for. You're not that summons that comes in the mailbox or that whatever. That's the piece of paper they're after, not you, the flesh and blood living man or woman. That's the thing they created. That's their instrument they're after. It isn't you. So stop thinking it's you. It isn't you. Right?
What did you tell the police officer when he asked you about your license?
They do
that
all
time,
kinds
Crow?
of slimy stuff.
What did you tell your police officer when he asked you about your license that time? Just explain it to him. That simple.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he said he asked me for my license. Well, this was a long time ago. I gave him the driver's license, and he looked at it for a second, and my dog was just salivating at the hip right beside me in the truck. It had a bench seat. It was an old Ford F-100. The dog was just trying to literally jump through the window and grab this guy. And he said to me, he goes, "Is the dog friendly?" I said, "Not at all." And I gave him the license, and he looked at it, and he points at it. He goes, "Is this you?" He was pointing at the picture on the driver's license, and I said, "No, man." I said, that's a piece of plastic." He looked at me, a big smirk came on his face, and he handed it back. He goes, "You have a good day. You have a good evening, sir." I said, "Cheerio," and away I went. Right. So some of them understand, right? Some of them do get it.
It's not even just the understanding; it's how much truth was in that little statement. The actual true fact is what you said. No, that's not you. It's a piece of plastic. I'm the living man sitting right here in the driver's seat of this truck. It's not me at all. It's funny, man. It's a funny thing, but that's how simple it is, right?
Yeah. Now that cop may have had an interaction with somebody a few days earlier that led him to question a little bit, or think at least about that. And that's why he asked me that question. Maybe is this you? You know,
or he knew
somebody
when he
said
knew
to him,
that you weren't.
That's not me. I mean, I don't go by that, or something. I don't
know. No, he could have knew that it wasn't you anyway, and he could have knew that you weren't willing to contract, 100%. And he just and laughed about it, right? But the point is, it's very simple. Of course, that's not you. That birth certificate is not you. That driver's license is not you. There's no flesh. Those are documents or pieces of plastic. They're creations of this empire. They're not you. Anyway, it's funny. That's all. It's funny. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it's been a good chat, guys. I appreciate you all coming on, and we'll all doing our own part. So, I'm on Facebook, Gordon James Berry Jr. That's where I do most of my work. And every once in a while, I come on and have a chat with my good buddy here, Crow, and we're all in this together. That's the truth. We win. We win. Don't get beat down by everything that's going on in the world. Just know we win. Thoughts create things. It all begins there. Thoughts create things. So we win for sure.
And we're never, ever, ever going to stop, and we're never going to quit, man. We're going to go and go, and we're like the Energizer Bunny. We're just never going to quit. Like that commercial of the thing beating the cymbals together, the rap, or whatever. Yeah. We're never going to quit, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll say goodnight to everybody. Love yous all. Appreciate everybody. Do us a favor, share this video out. Maybe it'll help somebody. And ultimately, that's what we're after. We want to grow in knowledge, right? And help other folks out, right? None of us are making money off of this. We're not getting rich, as you can tell by our general unkept appearance, right? So we mentioned this earlier. But in any case, we're doing it for the right reason. And we appreciate your support. And we know you guys all have busy lives, and you're willing to give up 2 hours and 23 minutes of your life to listen to us. So that says something. But anyway, thank you very much. Honestly.
Appreciate you guys.
Have
much
a great
love.
night, guys. Peace out. Much love.